Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Today, we are live at First Horizon Park, where the Nashville Sounds on Throwback Thursday are taking on the Norfolk Tide, the AAA affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles, 6:35. Come on out. We are so happy to be out at the ballpark for what is a fabulous, fabulous day. It looks like it should be a fabulous. Hold on, let me check my phone here to make sure that the weather will be nice tonight. There's a chance of some thunderstorms tonight. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. A beautiful day for baseball here on the program. The chairman of the board, David Reed, is here with us. Hello, Reed.
Good afternoon, sir.
A little disappointed after Reed's judging yesterday in Jared versus Joe, but I can live with
disappointed
it.
in yourself or with me? It should be yourself. Oh, okay.
Your judging yesterday has me disappointed, but we may be introducing a new segment here at some point today with the chairman of the board, David Reed. So I'm going to start with this. Saturday, the Titans open up rookie minicamp. TD will be here in 30 minutes. TD will be on the program in 30 minutes. We'll have a kind of an abbreviated TD Power Hour. Because TD's got a very compact schedule, especially with rookie minicamp right around the corner. So Cam Ward starts rookie minicamp this weekend with the Titans. And I have to admit, I know you people think I'm going to come on here today and I'm going to say something bad about Cam Ward because everyone's like, every day you always say bad things about Cam Ward and we want to hear good things about Cam Ward and we want to, but I'm not going to say that. I am kind of excited to see what it'll look like because Cam Ward, for the first time, when it's not photoshopped, will be in a Titans uniform. Cam Ward will be practicing at St. Thomas Sports Park in a Titan uniform. Cam Ward will not be throwing to Miami receivers against, the ACC opponents, but he'll be throwing to Chimere DK and Elic Iomanor and Gunnar Helm and all of those guys. I'm kind of excited about that. Like, again, I'm actually kind of excited for this entire thing to start. And I'm excited about what it'll look like. And other than that, as far as rookie mini camp is concerned, I don't think they're going to really do much. You know, it's funny when it comes to rookie mini camp because it's really more of an orientation than it is like some sort of competitive, okay, we're going to make big decisions and decide who's what and who our good players are and all that kind of stuff. They don't actually do that at rookie minicamp. You know, every now and then at rookie minicamp, they'll have guys that are trying to make the 90-man roster that'll be invited on a tryout basis. For those guys, rookie minicamp's kind of important. For everybody else, it's really not that big of a deal. So it's really more of an orientation, but it will be nice to see him in a Titans uniform for the first time. But there's one thing I want to beg of you all the fans, you all that go on Twitter and say things like, let Rand cook, and that love talking about how great the Titans are going to be in the future. The people who at the end of the season thought this team was drafting Shedeur Sanders with the first overall pick. Let's take it slow with Cam. Let's take everything slow with Cam. And I just want everybody to know one very important thing to me. If I owned the Titans, this is how I would feel. If I was the general manager, this is what I would be stressing to the owner. If I was the head coach, I'd want assurances that this is how both the GM and the owner felt. I don't really care about what happens this upcoming season. I know. It's a year of our lives we'll never get back. I know. We want to be excited about Titan football on Sundays. I know. But as far as 4 wins, 5 wins, 8 wins, it doesn't matter to me. Could the Titans be the next Houston Texans of 2 years ago or the Washington Commanders of last year? Maybe, but I kind of doubt it. And even if the Titans are the next Washington Commanders, which with the defense and the shape it's in, I would be freaking stunned. But even if you are, what's more important to you as a Titan fan? Is it this upcoming season? Or is it the next 10 to 15 seasons with Cam Ward as your quarterback? Because me personally, I'm worried about the next 10 seasons. I'm worried about making sure that 3 years from now, Cam Ward is where he needs to be so that we're not in the same spot going over, okay, who are the good quarterbacks in this year's class? So let's take it slow. And it's easy to talk before you get into rookie minicamp about wanting to take it slow. It's easy to say you're more concerned about the next 10 years than you are the next 10 games. But here's the thing about discipline. Very few people actually have it. I know I don't. The one thing in my 20s, I look back at how hard I was on myself for the things that I thought or didn't, whatever. And I'm like, man, I used to be so down on myself for not having discipline. And I've realized my lack of discipline, while it drives me crazy in some elements of my life, it's probably a good thing on the radio. Though I do think I'm disciplined at certain things. But very few people actually have discipline. That's why you need people in your life to hold you accountable. When it comes to the Titans, they talk about discipline, about the process and needing to be disciplined and the plans and needing to be disciplined. But then I saw how they ran their team last year. That was not a disciplined team. They need to be disciplined when it comes to the young quarterback. They need to understand that what happens week one hopefully has no bearing, big picture on what this thing's going to look like. And yet at the same time, I already know what's going to happen this weekend. The stretch portion is open for the media to shoot. So on all the newscasts, you'll see the Titans stretching. You'll see Cam Ward running around a little bit, but none of the interesting stuff they'll be able to shoot. But the Titans will have their own video crews there, and they'll be shooting everything. And there will be a pass that Cam Ward throws down the field that will hit Elic Aomanor in stride for a touchdown on air, and you people are going to be saying, that's QB1. Come on, baby. And I have no problem with that. I already know. I haven't even looked at the text line. I'm sure someone's going to say, Jared, why you got piss in the cereal today? That's not what I'm doing here. But what I am saying is this. When it comes to the Titans, and when it comes to the idea of being patient with the young quarterback, watching a touchdown thrown in rookie minicamp on air is exactly the kind of thing that starts to get people excited about a reality that may not exist right now. And even if it does exist right now, again, does it really matter? Because we're worried about the next 10 years, the next 15 years. The coach has said there's going to be a competition at training camp. Nobody believes him. I certainly don't believe him, but they've said it. Well, if everybody gets all worked up over rookie minicamp, or everybody just wants Cam to be the guy today, they want it right now, they don't have the discipline, they're going to start yelling and screaming when Brandon Allen is taking first-team reps. And if you think it is impossible to have this sort of excitement ruin a quarterback's development or ruin a team's plan, I remind you of what the Chicago Bears did 4 years ago. They signed Andy Dalton to be their starting quarterback. They traded up in the first round by dealing a future first-round pick to draft Justin Fields out of Ohio State. And the Bears said, Andy Dalton sucks. Even though Matt Nagy, the head coach at the time, the guy who was head coach or was the offensive coordinator in Kansas City when they got Patrick Mahomes, said, Andy Dalton's our starting quarterback. They put up a picture of Andy Dalton. It said QB1. And the Bears fans were pissed. We don't want to see Andy Dalton. He sucks. So by the middle of the year, they were losing, and the fans got their wish. Put in Fields. Justin Fields wasn't ready. Then they changed the coach because he's going to ruin Justin Fields. Brought in a whole new offensive coordinator. Said, okay, this is what we're going to do. They hurt the development of Justin Fields because they got impatient. When it comes to the Titans and when it comes to the Titan fans, again, the deal's done. They drafted him. I wouldn't have done it, but they did. But please be patient with this quarterback. The one thing that they kept saying, remember that Tom Pelissero piece where that assistant coach said he met with Shedeur Sanders and it was the worst interview of his life? And people got mad at this unnamed assistant coach as if he wasn't telling the truth. And then we saw Shedeur fall in the draft, and I'm like, probably was telling the truth. They said Cam's got the talent. Cam's got the work ethic. Cam's got the desire, but it's going to take some time. Cam needs work. So again, I stress to the team and I stress to you, if this is going to work, you have to be patient. Look at day one of rookie minicamp on Saturday for what it is. Rookie minicamp. Don't get too excited. If he throws a bunch of balls that sail over people's head, don't get too down. Lamar Jackson, his rookie year, played in a preseason game on Monday Night Football, and it looked like Lamar Jackson couldn't throw. Take it slow with Cam Ward. Take it slow with your expectations. Take it slow with your excitement. Because as Olivia Amato, the Peloton instructor with whom's class I took this morning, like she said, the things that make you better are done in the dark when nobody sees. It's what everybody wants in the light. So we got to be patient. We got to be patient. Don't get too excited. Don't get too carried away. Don't get too anything. And I promise I'll be the same on the other side. I'm not going to get too negative based on what happens at rookie minicamp or a preseason game unless they do something stupid like run the option with Cam Ward and get him obliterated. Deal? 615-737-1025. That's our phone number. That's how we're starting. 615-737-1025. And I have a question because Brian Callahan has left the door open. You may think he's lying, and I kind of think he's lying, but Brian Callahan has cracked that door open to this idea that Cam Ward may lose the quarterback competition and Will Levis or Brandon Allen, or I'd be stunned by this, but Tim Boyle might be the starting quarterback. But I do have a question for everybody that has a problem with that. We'll do it next. Live from First Horizon Park, where the Sounds take on Norfolk tonight. It's Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. If you were out on the field at rookie minicamp and you were analyzing Cam Ward, what in particular would you be looking at and trying to say, okay, he's either got it or he doesn't? At this point in time, what would you be looking for?
Well, first of all, the operation. I mean, he needs to get people in and out of the huddle and into the right formations and all those things. But that's sort of a basic fundamental. First thing I want him to do is protect the ball, because Will Levis had so many epic turnovers last year during games and really struggled during the off season and preseason camps against his own defense, that if Cam Ward tries to show everybody what an amazing arm he has and ends up throwing it to his own defense in practice too much, there will be a healthy degree of institutional here we go againism. And he needs to show he can protect the ball. He needs to show he can protect himself. And really, in order to be the starter on day one, if he can't protect himself, he shouldn't start. And that means he needs to get into the right play, see the defense pre-snap and check out of bad plays and into a good play. He needs to be able to check the right protection based on what he sees pre-snap on the defense. And he needs to know where his answers are. In other words, if things break down and pressure's coming, he needs to know right now where his outlets are and which outlets are likely to be open based on what the coverage is. So those are the things I want to see from him first.
That was Trevor on Tuesday on the program. That was Trevor talking about Cam Ward. Now, all those things at rookie minicamp, like, is Cam Ward going to be able to – you're not going to know about that. Like, it's going to take a little bit of time before you know whether or not Cam Ward, knows the protection well enough to not get himself killed or is smart enough not to try to throw the ball to the other team. Again, those things will happen. And I've said this time and time again when it comes to Cam Ward, and I've said you got to be patient with Cam Ward. And it's funny because there wasn't a lot of pushback when it came into the text line about me saying, hey, let's all be patient with Cam Ward. Let's take a big breath and say, let's be patient with this young quarterback. Let's not demand right away that this young quarterback all of a sudden become Peyton Manning. But then when you talk about Brian Callahan bringing up the idea that there's going to be an open competition at training camp, one that seems so laughable given the fact that they're including Tim Boyle in the potential battle. I don't have a problem with this, but every time the fans hear this, they go nuts. Every time you bring up the idea of, well, what about starting Will Levis? No! Well, what about starting Brandon Allen? No! Brandon Allen, he sucks. And as you know, I am in favor of sitting Cam Ward on the bench. I believe in sitting young quarterbacks. Again, you don't have to sit them the whole season. And maybe he gets out to training camp and in the preseason, and we realize, including me, yeah, he's ready to play. But I am in favor of sitting young quarterbacks because the greatest quarterback who ever lived, Tom Brady, sat on the bench. The best quarterback in the NFL right now, Patrick Mahomes, sat on the bench. Aaron Rodgers has 4 MVPs. He sat on the bench. Steve McNair's the best quarterback the Titans have ever had. He sat on the bench. So, again, I don't think it's a coincidence that all these really, really, really good quarterbacks sat on the bench. Now, there are guys that didn't sit on the bench. Peyton Manning didn't sit on the bench. Jaden Daniels didn't sit on the bench. Joe Burrow didn't sit on the bench. But I do think that you're better off sitting the quarterback on the bench. Nobody ever does that anymore, but that's what I believe. So every time that comes up, Titan fans get super, super offended. If I were to say, well, I think Brandon Allen should be the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans because I am more worried about the next 10 years than I am worried about the next 10 games. You people still get mad. And all I have to ask is, what's the worst thing that can happen if you sit Cam Ward on the bench? What's the worst thing that can happen? Because people say, well, it's different, Jared. When Patrick Mahomes sat on the bench, that team had Alex Smith. It's different, Jared. When Tom Brady sat on the bench, he was a 6th-round rookie, and the main guy, Drew Bledsoe, was the starting quarterback. This team has Brandon Allen, as if it's so different. if this team had gone out and signed Daniel Jones in free agency and it said, okay, well, we're going to sit Cam for Daniel Jones. It's not. Again, what's the worst thing that can happen in that instance? I believe the worst thing that can happen is you lose some games. So, again, we're more worried about the next 10 years than we are the next 10 minutes. Now, let's do the other side of this. You rush Cam Ward out there because we picked him number one and he's got to play. And everything that all these guys have said about, hey, it's going to take some time developing the quarterback. Mike Borgonzi saying there has to be a plan in place when referencing what they did in Kansas City. All these other guys, they don't know, but he's our guy. We picked him number one and he's got to play. Now what's the worst that can happen? Oh, you can ruin him. So if you sit him on the bench, which again, I am willing to watch training camp practice. I am willing to watch the preseason games. And I'm willing to say that if I feel comfortable with Cam Ward out there, then I'll put him out there. But I'm not today. Where I sit right now, I am not interested in you just telling me Cam has to start. I'm not saying Cam has to earn it from the standpoint that Cam has to go out there and be better than Will Levis on day one. Cam has to be better than Brandon Allen on day one because he's probably not going to be better than those guys on day one. More talented than those guys, yes. Ready to play in an NFL game? No. But Cam's got to prove to me that if I put him out there, he's not going to ruin that great talent that he has. And the way I look at it is, what's the worst that can happen if Brandon Allen plays quarterback? Well, the fans get upset about it on social media, and you get embarrassed on Sunday when Mahomes comes in and Brandon Allen can't beat him. What's the worst that happens if you play Cam before he's ready? You could ruin him. And I don't understand how nobody else, or I wouldn't say nobody else, but I do not understand how people are offended at the idea that you could ruin a quarterback when we see quarterbacks ruined all the time. Again, does Justin Fields suck? Or did the Chicago Bears ruin him? Andrew Luck won 30 less games than Ryan Tannehill. Nobody would have projected that when they were drafted, but Indianapolis ruined him. So I'm very protective of the quarterback. TD with an abbreviated TD Power Hour is next. We'll have 30 minutes. We'll talk rookie minicamp, and then we'll get right to your phones. 615-737-1025. We're live from First Horizon Park. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Check 1 2 1 2 3 2 1. Good afternoon. I'm David Reed. This Game Center update is brought to you by Holiday World and Splash and Safari, celebrating 25 years of free unlimited soft drinks. Just a short drive from Nashville. It's the place for family memories in a summer you won't forget. Get your tickets at holidayworld.com. The Knicks overcame yet another 20-point deficit to down the Celtics 91-90 and take a 2-0 lead in that series. OKC even their series with Denver on OKC even their series with Denver at a game apiece with Denver after a 49-106 beatdown of the Nuggets. The Timberwolves will look to take advantage of a Steph Curry-less Warriors team and even that series tonight. That's a 7:30 tip in Minnesota. And after one season in Carolina, the Panthers are moving on to former Texan and Titans pass rusher David Clowney. Nashville SC announced that it will host the premier Nashville SC announced today that it will host Premier League team Aston Villa in a friendly at Geodis Park on August the 2nd. And the Sounds homestand continues tonight against Norfolk. 6:35 first pitch at First Horizon Park. Pregame starts at 6:20 on 94.9 The Fan.
Stillman and Company live out at First Horizon Park. Again, the Sounds taking on the Norfolk Tide tonight at 6:35. A special early edition of the TD Power Hour with mini camp right around the corner. TD Terron Davenport joining us now on the program. So TD, let's get right into it. Rookie mini camp starts this weekend. It'll be the first time we see Cam Ward in a Titans uniform and a Titans helmet throwing to Titans receivers. What's your excitement level?
Oh, I mean, it's 1,000. It's the first time you get to see the franchise, right? That's resting on that right shoulder. You get to see what he could do, and obviously the excitement is there to see Xavier Restrepo. It's going to be a fun time, man, and it's crazy that an undrafted free agent is the second most popular player on the rookie minicamp roster. But hey, it is what it is.
I do wonder, when it comes to the actual rookie minicamp, I feel like just from having covered rookie minicamp the last couple of years, it's really more an orientation than it is like a competition kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean it's you're always anytime. Don't get it twisted. Anytime you set foot on the field, you're competing. But it is an orientation in that this is the first impression, right? This is the first date. You've gone through the whole process of identifying each other. Now you selected each other, and now it's time to go out on that date. And this is an opportunity for these guys to make their mark. And I've seen guys, they're like Bryce Oliver. He was someone that right from the start, you're like, oh, okay, let's see what he can do. Isaiah Aiton, he's another one. He's been released since, but I remember going there and seeing him. We're like, dang, who is this dude? And then we all went back and we saw him the next time. And we're like, okay, he's continuing, and he ended up on the practice squad. He was active a few weeks, and this is the opportunity to plant that seed.
What's funny is I think it was Malcolm Butler who was at a tryout, and the tryout got him an invite to rookie minicamp.
Yeah.
The invite to rookie minicamp got him on the 90-man roster, and then he ends up picking off a pass, to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I do wonder, what are your expectations early on for Cam Ward, both in rookie minicamps and then as they start to integrate the rookies in with the veterans and OTAs?
Yeah, well, let's also say this. There will probably be some veteran invites. Like last year, Shane Ray was invited, and he was a guy rookie minicamp, ended up parlaying that to OTAs and minicamp and so on and so forth. So you do have that. But I think what you really want to look for in Cam Ward, get him in and out of the huddle, right? How effectively he could do that, regurgitating the play call, doing those types of things, the leadership that he has on the field, how he's able to address, like, let's say a receiver runs the wrong route. How do you go about showing that you're that leader, right? And the right leader in that, okay, you got to talk to player X one way, but player Y another. How do you start to learn the way to best be a leader and be a guy that pushes everybody's individual button?
I heard Derek talk about Joe Flacco when he was a rookie in Baltimore and Derek was on the team. And Derek said Joe didn't come in on the first day and say, like, okay, I'm leading the team,
Right.
or that Joe just went about his business. Now, that team had veterans like Derek and like others, especially a lot of successful veterans on the defensive side of the ball, too. I do wonder, because the Titans don't have Terrell Suggs and Ray Lewis on the other side and Ed Reed on the other side of the field, does Cam walk in the first day like, all right, guys, let's get behind me? Or is it like, no, Cam just goes about his business early on, kind of gets a feel for everybody. And then, once he technically wins the starting job, once he's in with the starters and we know it's his job, then he starts doing that. How do you see that going down?
I think Cam, just in talking to him, because I asked him specifically about that, like, how do you go into a huddle and you look 10 other guys in the eye, 10 guys that are older than you, and get them to follow you when you say we're going that way? And he said he's not a rah-rah guy. He's not looking to inspire or motivate anybody. And he quite frankly said that if you're someone at this level that needs to be motivated or inspired, then you might not be in the right business. So that tells me that he's more of a lead by example. He's going to go in there, observe, and see everything. I don't think he's going to come in saying, I'm the leader or this, that, and the third. When it's time to speak, I will definitely believe that he will speak. But all the trumpeting and all that stuff, I don't think that's going to happen. That just doesn't seem like that's Cam Ward. He's a guy that's going to show leadership by, knowing everybody's name. It sounds small, but the fact of the matter is, when you're out there with a bunch of guys like that and they tell you his name once, and you remember it means something. And those are the seeds that I could see him planting as a leader, and then that growing into more as he continues to sink his roots even further into the city.
Take Cam out of it. Who are you most excited to see at rookie minicamp outside of Cam?
Oh, it's easy, man. Restrepo. I mean, Restrepo was one of my favorite receivers in this draft. I love the toughness. I'm looking forward to seeing him. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to see some of the other guys. Alec Iomanner. He's grown on me. The more and more I watch of him, I'm like, okay, this guy actually is kind of tough. So those are two that I would have to say. But if I have to pick one, it's Restrepo.
I got to tell you, I'm excited to see Gunnar Helm. I don't get too into the, well, he got hurt and so he ran a worse time. And because of that, he fell in the draft. I'm not worried about that. But I'm looking for some consistency, TD, at tight end. Wiley has shown some flashes, but he gets hurt. Chig has shown some flashes, but he's inconsistent. I mean, Chig caught 2 touchdowns last year, one at Chicago, one at Houston, that were both incredible feats of his athleticism, but then disappears. And so I'm looking for consistency at tight end. So I would kind of circle Helm. What do we think of him?
Yeah, no, Helm is one of those guys, right? A big target, a guy that, knows how to use his leverage. He's going to get open. He's reliable. I'm looking forward to seeing him also. I mean, honestly, the whole group. But when you look at Helm, I think he's going to develop that 12 personnel package. It's going to be pretty nice. And Helm, you can flex him and have him run routes there too.
TD, what do you think about Brian Callahan saying that there's going to be an open competition at quarterback between all 4 guys? Do you think we're actually going to see the Titans, with the limited amount of OTA reps they have, go into this and say, okay, Levis, you get 5 first-team reps. Allen, you get 5 first-team reps. Cam, you get 5 first-team reps. Or do we think that's all for show? And then once they integrate the rookies, it'll be Cam Ward getting all the first-team reps?
Well, look, just like I said before, I could say it's a nice day, but how nice of a day is it, right? Just the same, you're saying it's a competition, but how intense of a competition is it? You know what I mean? So he said it's a competition. I don't think that necessarily means that the reps are going to be distributed exactly evenly. I think there's going to be opportunities, but make no mistake about it. The 4 quarterbacks going in, they know who is in line to be the starter. They know what it is, and it's up to them with those reps that they have to make the most of it and try to challenge for more reps. That's really the bottom line. That's how it's going to work.
Do you think the coach has an open mind where if one of these guys outplays Cam, that he would actually consider making that other guy the starting quarterback? Or do you think it's pretty much it's like these guys at spring training,
Hey, look,
I
it's
hit
like this.
300 and I still didn't make the team.
Yeah, it's like this. Look, remember back in the day when you had the championship fighter, right? You're not going to win a decision over the champ. You know what I mean? You got to knock the champ out in order to take that belt. And I think this is the same situation in that you have to overly convince Brian Callahan that you're the better option right now. That's really what it's going to have to be. And on top of that, there's going to have to be very limited promise from Cam Ward. So I say all that to say, it would be mind-boggling to me if Brandon Allen, no disrespect, Will Levis or Tim Boyle, they start over Cam Ward.
If that happens, do you think that that's a bad sign for Cam?
It's not a good one. I think it's an incomplete sign for him, right? Because I'm not going to say completely bad because like maybe the guy needs to go back in the oven and bake a little bit more. I think he could play right away, but I don't think it's a good one. It would mean incomplete.
You know what's funny is I remember watching Hard Knocks when Ryan Tannehill was competing for the starting job in Miami, and David Garrard and Matt Moore were the quarterbacks ahead of him. And I would argue that Garrard and Moore were probably more accomplished at this point in their careers than Levis and Brandon Allen. And Ryan Tannehill didn't even know how to slide. And they were sitting there with David Garrard, and David Garrard was begging him, saying, please slide, please slide. And even then, the coaches sat down and said, okay, Ryan Tannehill's the starter. I kind of feel like when it comes to Cam Ward, unless they're afraid that Cam is going to hurt himself by not being able to recognize blitzes or something like that, I find it hard to believe that they would actually put Cam Ward on the bench.
No, and that's exactly the case. It would be something that would really surprise me. But I'll say this because I know there's questions about the quote unquote plan around Cam Ward, and you mentioned Ryan Tannehill. I forget the coach, but they were together at A&M, and the whole thing that helped Tannehill kind of get off to the start that he did was, look, it was an extension of what he did at Texas A&M, the offense, right? And so just the same, Jaden Daniels, last year, that's what Cliff Kingsbury did a really good job incorporating concepts that he ran at LSU. We've seen it with Bobby Slowick and CJ Stroud. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks that hit the ground running. That's what their plan is, to incorporate a lot of the stuff from Miami that Cam Ward did well into this current offense. And the beauty of it, I forget what question I asked that made Callahan speak on it, but he talked about how Cam has no problem saying he likes this or doesn't like that. And that's going to help sort through, okay, what do we need to get in here to make this young man feel comfortable? There is a plan that they have for him. Now, whether or not that plan works is a different story, but it absolutely exists.
By the way, Mike Sherman was the coach.
Mike Sherman, yeah.
A&M. And if you remember who the quarterback coach was that came from A&M, was Zach Taylor.
Yep, Zach Taylor is right. We did a story. Ben Baby and I did a story the one time that the Bengals and Titans played and Tannehill was a starter, and Zach Taylor was really great as far as helping with that. And it was crazy because I remember at the league meetings 2 years ago, I went up to him and I introduced myself. He said, "No, you don't introduce. I know who you are. We did the Tannehill story." I said, "All right, that's what's up."
There you go. All right, we're to your phones in an abbreviated TD Power Hour, 615-737-1025. We hit them next for TD, Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. The company 1025 1063 The Game, an abbreviated TD Power Hour live at First Horizon Park, where the Sounds take on the Norfolk Tide tonight. TD, do you have a thought, or do you want to go right to the phone?
Yes. Quick thought. We touched on undrafted free agents, and there's a young man, a returner, and obviously we know this team, this franchise, they are desperately in need of somebody to take one back to the house. Well, this guy right here, he was a American Football Coaches Association All-American. His name is Virgil Lemons, and let me tell you, folks, 25 yards a punt return. 25. That's what he averaged. 602 yards total punt return yardage. Yeah, that's somebody to watch. He's a corner. He's 6 feet, 188, 190. Definitely going to have my eyes on him.
Let's go to Mike. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mike, thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead.
Hey guys, so TD, my main question is, with the additions of 2 receivers, 3 if you count Restrepo, it's just, is there even a place for Traylon Burks on this team, or is he going to have to ball out during preseason to even make the squad? Because I just feel like he strikes me as a candidate that's somebody that would be quickly cut. I wish we could get something for him, but man, that trade with A.J. Brown, I know we've probably talked about this more than we ever should, but it's looking worse and worse as things go on.
Yeah, that's going to go down as one of the all-time doozies in franchise history. Look, Burks, the good thing, I hate to say being injured is good, but the good thing is that it kind of like holds a roster spot. So once he's activated, they'll bring him along and maybe he could beat out one of those 5 other guys for those last basically 2 spots, because that's in essence what it comes down to. But he's more or less going to be competing against, the Bryce Olivers, the Io Manners, X receivers. Chimere Dike is going to work at multiple spots. So he's going to more compete at that X position, and he's going to have to double up as a returner, kick return. He's done that before. And he'll also, have to get on that punt team, as a gunner.
Just to follow up on your first point you made about Virgil Lemons, is the Jaquan Jackson thing, that's over?
Yeah. Look, it's very likely over. He was inactive, for the last 3 or 4 games. I mean, you never know what work he put in over the offseason and how. I'm not going to count anybody out, but he's one of those guys, that I'll probably say is outside looking in.
Let's go to Adam, who's up next here on the TD Power Hour. Adam, you're on with TD.
Hey, TD. So my question, I've led in with Jared in the last couple of weeks with hey, I don't feel like the Titans have an opportunity to help Cam succeed. I just feel like as a whole, we suck so bad that he's going into a non-win situation. So do you think it's more likely, since you've seen him, that Cam puts us in position to make the playoffs, or that the team is looking to draft a quarterback as early as next year?
Oh, he faded away. Playoffs? Playoffs? Nah, man. Don't think playoffs right now, right? At least not this year. I highly doubt he's that. But, to say that they're in a no-win situation, it's just not in me to have that give-up mindset. I'm always going to say there's a chance. And it's just because of things I faced in life. I'm never going to say there's no chance. So we're not going to agree there. We'll see what happens. I think Cam Ward is his personality, his makeup, from what I've observed and for what, I've been told, he's going to be weatherproof, right? There's going to be some rainy days, some thunderstorms, but I think he's going to be able to fight through that, because you look at the things the path that he's taken, it's prepared him for this moment. So I don't think there's going to be an issue. It's going to be very important, and we talked about this on Talking with TD, the 3 things. You got to have stability, the right situation, and talent around him. There's not much there now, but you have to continue to build and add on to it. I think he's going to be fine. I don't see them having to draft another quarterback for a bit. I believe Cam Ward is going to be exactly what this organization has needed.
TD, what do you make of the fact that, like, Caleb Williams last year threw for 3,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, And Jaden Daniels had very, very similar numbers. But Jaden Daniels' team was in the NFC Championship game, and Caleb's team won 5 games. And so it feels like the general consensus is Caleb had a bad year and Jaden's on his way. But then when I look at Caleb's stats, I'm like, doesn't look like – I think those are good stats for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, but you got to look at the game too. Like, watch – I'm not sure how many Commanders games you watched and how many Bears games you watched, but it was very clear when Jaden Daniels was on the field, like everybody believed. Everybody
I watched both play
him.
the Titans, and I will say they both looked very different against the Titans.
Right. So that's one game, but I mean, it literally the mindset. Just in talking to John Kahn, who's in the locker room, ESPN, NFL Nation, Commanders reporter, he said, they felt as long as Cam was on, or excuse me, as long as Daniels was on the field, they had an opportunity to win. So you got to go beyond the box score, beyond the box, and then look at what he did in the playoffs.
Sure, I guess I'm saying, like, I don't think Caleb is, ruined or on the bad.
Not at all. It's crazy to say that he's ruined. Whoever is saying that, you got to fall back and remember, it takes time. And he didn't have a horrible year.
James is up next. James, you're on with TD. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Again, Terron's always good having you on there. With this,
appreciate it.
One of my favorite. Yeah, you know this. I've said it 1,000 times. I just want to ask you this about the offensive line. How much do you think we've upgraded from the previous years? I believe we have tremendously, but I want to hear your take on that.
Yeah.
And my second question, I want you to address this because Jared talks about this quite often. How do you feel like, how transparent are the Titans administration organization now with this new coach compared to the previous regime? We all know that the Predators are much more transparent than the Titans are. I know you don't cover the Predators, but I wish you just comment on both those two key questions, and I'll hang up and listen. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I guess James is talking from a coaching perspective. Look, Mike Vrabel, I'm a Mike Vrabel fan. Like, I really like Mike Vrabel. But I will say Brian Callahan, who I'm also a fan of, I think Brian Callahan is much more transparent. Talking injuries, I mean, look, like he told us. If you remember, Jared, remember 2018? Rashawn Evans had it is like, what the heck is wrong with this man? Why is he? And then you remember the following year, Nate Davis. We're like, what is up with Nate Davis? Brian Callahan with Traylon Burks. Hey, look, this is what it is. Oh, look, Snead, this is what happened. You know what I mean? It's definitely a more transparency from that perspective. The conversation, the line of conversation is really good on both of their behalf. So I can't say one is more than the other as far as that conversation, but I do believe that overall this coaching staff is more transparent than the previous one. As far as the front office is concerned, it's more or less the same. No, it's not. Let me be honest. It's still good. I'll put it that way. It's still good. So you do have that. They're accessible, and I think that's the key, and that's something that I've appreciated about all three GMs that have been here, because I will tell you, in Philly, Howie Roseman, nah, you weren't really getting to him, right? And I remember in Baltimore, Ozzie Newsome was there at the time, and if you saw him, yeah, you could holler at him, but there wasn't texting, there wasn't that type of back and forth. And even Eric DaCosta, not really much there. So this organization definitely, they're in a good place when it comes to dealing with media. I think they've done a good job of keeping leaks from coming out and things like that. So that's what I have to say about that. As far as the offensive line is concerned, Mike Bergonzi employed my favorite shopping strategy. I'm a big fan of buy one, get one free, right? Obviously, because it was buy one, get one free, and because it was something that's not normally out there on the market, they had to pay more than what they probably should have, right? The value may not be as supreme as it could have been, right? Dan Moore, they signed him to that deal. He plays left tackle. You flip Latham over to right tackle, and now I think you've solidified the bookends. Now, it's not the best in the league, but you solidified it. But to me, the ideal signing, the biggest signing, Kevin Zeitler. That veteran coming in here, that's great for Skoronski. It's great for Latham, who's next to him, and we'll see what happens at center. I think this offensive line is going to be solid. Again, they're not going to be the best in the league, but I think they're going to be solid.
You think it'll take them some time?
As always, anytime you know, five guys, like it took you and David time to get on the same page, but it seems like you guys are on the same page now. You know what I mean? So it's going to take time. That's just a part of relationship.
And you can't practice offensive line play anymore.
Yeah, you can't practice it, but you could work on technique and work on steps and things like that. There's things that you could do. Now, obviously, the physicality part of it, you know, you can't replicate that as much anymore, but you could definitely do things because here's what happens, right? When you get tired, you fall back on your technique. Like that's what gets you where you got to go. So you could hone that and master that. And you've seen the practices, how Bill Callahan, you know, has gone about being able to make sure that the technique is right.
TD, great stuff as always. We'll be listening to Talking with TD. Enjoy rookie minicamp, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, for sure. And appreciate the short hour. Glencliff High School. Been working with that football team, man. I love to get out there on the grass and looking forward to doing that. So I appreciate you cutting it short for me today.
Sure. Coach TD. Stillman and Company, we continue. 615-737-1025. With some credit, I've got to give somebody who's not getting a lot of it right now. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios and presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. We are live today from First Horizon Park, where the Nashville Sounds will take on the Norfolk Tide at 6:35 tonight. Get excited about that. So this is a topic that I have wanted to get off my chest for a little while, David Reed. Is that not right? I mean, we've had this on the grid, I think, every day so far this week. And finally, I'm getting it out there.
Yeah, it's been on the menu all week. I'm surprised you haven't found time to shoehorn this one in.
So if we go back 2 weeks to today, 2 weeks from today ago, the Tennessee Titans were on the clock with the number 1 pick. And I said before we did the mock draft that I was getting intel from an agent who was representing a quarterback, not Cam Ward, but from an agent who was representing a quarterback in this year's draft or multiple quarterbacks in this year's draft, that Shedeur Sanders was not going in round 1. And I was like, apparently, according to what I heard, Shedeur went to the combine and he pissed everybody off. And Joe Rexrode, for whatever reason, even though I was reading it off my phone in that moment, is like, why'd you keep that from everybody when you said that? I'm like, what? I didn't. I read it. And I thoroughly enjoyed 2 weeks ago the Shedeur Sanders slide in the first round of the draft. Again, thoroughly enjoyed it. I saw the house that they had built for Shedeur. They had a giant collection of hats on the wall. You know, oh, if I get picked by this team, I'll wear this hat. If I'll get picked by, they had legendary posted everywhere. I mean, it was Shedeur City. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching Shedeur and watching Deion and knowing that they were getting just absolutely slapped in the face by the NFL. Well, that was 2 weeks ago. And I'm going to give Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders some real credit. Because Shedeur fell in the draft on that Thursday night and that Friday night and that Saturday night, and he didn't complain. He got pranked cold. He didn't complain. He went on day 3 of the draft. He didn't complain. He was so happy when he got picked, he went and jumped in the pool. He went to a team that already had 4 quarterbacks on the roster, including one that was drafted the night before. And he has yet to complain. And with all the talk surrounding Shedeur Sanders, guess who we haven't heard in 2 weeks chiming in and throwing somebody under the bus? We haven't heard Deion Sanders say a word. Because if Deion Sanders came out and complained about the entire NFL and the way they treated his son, that would be A1 information. ESPN would have to get off their knees for 5 minutes about the Knicks to be able to talk about what Deion Sanders said. But he hasn't said anything. It's pretty stunning. And let me say this. Good for Shedeur Sanders. You guys know me. I am not a Shedeur Sanders apologist. I did not think throughout this entire process that Shedeur could do no wrong. Unlike Mel Kiper Jr., Louis Riddick, Stephen A. Smith, Josina Anderson. As you all know, I called Shedeur a TV prospect because I felt like his standing and the attention and the breakdown was more based on how he was viewed on TV than how NFL teams around the league viewed him as a prospect. And I did enjoy he and Deion getting what I felt like was their comeuppance on night 1 of the draft. But since Shedeur got the comeuppance, we haven't seen or heard anything negative from Shedeur Sanders. And while I don't love his game, I do look at that quarterback room. Joe Flacco's 155 years old. Kenny Pickett has baby hands and, you know, again, struggled in Pittsburgh to the point that he pissed off Mike Tomlin so bad that he decided to go get Russell Wilson. And Dylan Gabriel, and I like Dylan Gabriel, and I've heard a lot of good things about Dylan Gabriel, but he's Dylan Gabriel. He's got a shot, in theory, to win that job. He's got a much better shot to win that job than if he were to go to, I don't know, Buffalo or Baltimore or Kansas City or Philadelphia. And I also think the Shedeur Sanders draft slide has also shown us that Deion Sanders has learned his place too. If Shedeur had been taken by the Giants with the 3rd overall pick in the draft, which was never going to happen, but if Shedeur had been taken by the Giants with the 3rd pick, I have no doubt that Deion would have taken a massive victory lap. And at the first sign of trouble, which always happens with a young quarterback, especially a young quarterback on the New York Giants, Deion would have been blasting whomever he wanted to blame from the pulpit in Boulder. Instead, I actually think Deion has learned his place in all of this. You're the coach of Colorado, dude. Go worry about that. Don't tell NFL teams and NFL coaches what to do. And again, I think Deion's learned that. I am far from a Shedeur fan. You know that. I think it's ridiculous that he signs his name with dollar signs, that he had a draft party with the word legendary splashed all around the room, that he beat nobody in college, that he had his jersey retired for no reason, and he threw a wobbly football on his pro day indoors. He's not big, he's not athletic, and he has a weak arm. I don't really know exactly what the allure is. For me, the only allure to the Titans drafting Shedeur Sanders would have been the daily Shedeur Sanders talk that would have lit up the phone lines and lit up the radio. And since, again, most of you people fall in line when it comes to the Titans, they draft a quarterback, and any type of criticism that quarterback has ever faced goes out the window, except for me. I believe it would have been very advantageous for the radio show had they drafted Shedeur Sanders, because I think that had they drafted Shedeur number 1 overall, Deion would have felt like he was invincible, could say whatever he wants, and I think Deion would have issues with this program. But everybody loves a good redemption story. And maybe this is the one that Shedeur Sanders needed. It almost feels like the NFL had an intervention publicly with Shedeur and Deion 2 weekends ago. And maybe, just maybe, Shedeur gets the message. And in the long run, no matter how popular the NFL draft is, we all know that what matters more is what you do after the draft than where you get drafted. Caroline told me at the Super Bowl when she interviewed Shedeur for Yahoo Sports that she just felt like Shedeur thought his poo didn't smell. Shedeur gave her a bag of Gatorade swag, hats and jackets and things like that. And Shedeur said, "There's nothing in there I wouldn't wear." And Caroline looked at him like, seriously? Again, it was almost like Shedeur was big timing her. Here's some crap. Trust me, I wear it too. So maybe this humbling, and there's no other way to put it, for Shedeur and for Deion, maybe this humbling is exactly what they needed if he was ever going to make it in the National Football League. Again, I'm not a Shedeur fan. I'm not a Deion fan, though I did grow up a Deion fan because I'm an Atlanta Braves fan. But let me just say, minor setback, major comeback, who knows? Everybody loves a good redemption story. And so here's to hoping Shedeur can make something of it. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on the Shedeur and Deion front. Plus, there's something yesterday that I called out as total bullcrap. And the more I've thought about it, the more not only do I think it's total bullcrap, but I also think it's rehearsed bullcrap. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman & Company on 102.5, 106 through the game.
Elephant in the room, Shedeur Sanders. What happened, Tom? Why did he go so late in the draft?
I mean, it's a good question. I wasn't a part of any evaluation process or
Skip Bayless
see
says
that.
otherwise.
No. Well, everyone's got that's the problem with media is everyone can just say whatever they want. I actually texted Shedeur because I know him very well. And I said, dude, like whatever happens, wherever you go, like that's your first day. Day 2 matters more than the draft. I was 199.
Yeah.
So who could speak on it better than me? Like what that really means. Yeah. Use it as motivation. You're going to get your chances. Go take advantage of it.
That was Tom Brady on some podcast. I assume Reed at some very popular podcast. Do you know whose podcast that was?
I have Tom Brady was the only voice on there I could recognize.
Okay. So that was Tom Brady on some podcast. Again, what was the podcast? I don't know. I'm sure it was an important podcast. I'm not knocking that, but that was Tom Brady going on a podcast. And I'm sure you've heard it by now. We played the cut yesterday and I said, I think that's bullcrap. I think Tom Brady going out there and being like, I was not involved at all in any evaluation of Shedeur Sanders. Thus, the Raiders, who passed on Shedeur something like 7 times before he got picked by the Browns. That does not mean that I didn't want to draft Shedeur. I had nothing to do with it. John Spytek's the general manager. Pete Carroll is the coach. This has nothing to do with me. I don't buy that. I do not buy that whatsoever. I didn't buy it yesterday. But then I started thinking about it. And I think I was a little angered by Brady's whole, oh yeah, the media, they can just say whatever they want. Hey, Tom, you work for Fox. You're the media too. The more I started to think about this, though, and I heard Robbie and Joe talking to Charles Robinson about this today, and Charles Robinson was thinking that the podcast might have been edited. I think that was just so they could get the promotional video out, to condense things a little bit. But I did start thinking about this. The more I think about it, the more I think that whole thing was rehearsed. So the Raiders pass on Shedeur like 7 times. Brady's friends with Deion. Brady's friends with Shedeur. Like the guy in the podcast said, elephant in the room. You own the Raiders. You're a part owner of the Raiders. The owner has said multiple times how important you are to their process. Compared him to John Gruden, who was the head coach and de facto general manager in Vegas when he was running the team. And the owner said, yeah, this is like having Gruden back in our organization. Again, if you're putting 2 and 2 together, it sounds like Brady doesn't like Shedeur Sanders. Again, might like him as a guy, but doesn't like Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback. And that's okay, because this is business. And business is different than whether or not you personally like the guy. But the more I think about this, the more I think this was rehearsed. The more I think Brady told the interviewer ahead of time, hey, I'm going to do your podcast, and you can ask me about XYZ, but be sure to ask me about Shedeur. And be sure to ask me, well, Skip Bayless said that you were involved, just so Brady could just roll right in to his anti-media rant. And I don't think that this was for me. I don't think this was for you. I don't think this was for David Reed. I think this was for an audience of 2, Shedeur and Deion. And I think Brady wants to make sure that Shedeur and Deion don't feel any animosity towards him because he passed on him like 7 or 8 times. And the real reason I think this was rehearsed is people love this anti-media thing. It's the media. The media. Who was that North Carolina gubernatorial candidate that I guess was caught with all the, was it bestiality or something?
Mark Robinson, but I don't remember.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I don't remember bestiality part, but yes, I do remember.
It was again, I'm sorry. It was something like super dirty and sexual, like something ridiculous.
Yes.
I don't remember the details of it. And I will never forget, they went and they asked him about it. And he was like, this is some tabloid trash. This is nothing that would have to do with any. I'm like, okay, all right, blaming the media. So everybody loves to blame the media. And if it wasn't bestiality, I apologize for that.
Just for the record, by the way, that was Logan Paul's podcast, Impulsive. So that makes me hate this entire situation even more.
Logan Paul. He's famous, right?
Yes, very famous.
He's the one that fought Mike Tyson.
No, that was his brother, Jake Paul.
So then what's this guy?
Logan Paul's a podcaster. He was one of the first big YouTube breakout stars. He's now in the WWE. He has a podcast. He's kind of a lowlife.
Doesn't sound like a low life if he's getting Tom Brady on his podcast and he's
there's plenty of
with Rey Mysterio Jr. and Goldberg.
There's plenty of low life people who are popular and have podcasts. He's another example of that in my life.
True. So again, I go back to the whole like blame the media thing. That's always so easy to do. And then the Skip Bayless thing. This is why I think it was rehearsed. Because if there was ever somebody if you were to ever take, I think an assumption that most of us have, Reed, I don't want to speak for you, but do you think that Tom Brady told the Raiders not to take Shedeur?
Yes. I think he's
that too.
I think he's close enough to. He's been said in some circles as he was Shedeur's mentor, Shedeur's coach. So yes, he knows Shedeur Sanders. He knows the game, and I think he told them to pass on Shedeur Sanders, and they did. And now he's trying to cover himself.
Thank you. And if you want to take something like that, which again seems like common sense to me, the owner has come out and said Brady's going to be a big part of the quarterback evaluation. I mean, John Spytek, the general manager they hired, was buddies with Brady in Tampa Bay. I mean, I feel like the easiest way to turn what most people think into some sort of conspiracy theory is to be like, well, Skip Bayless said, and then Brady can just, Skip Bayless. Who cares what Skip Bayless says? Because again, most people don't trust the media, and most people think Skip Bayless is full of crap. So you make it about the media and Skip Bayless, and it's like, oh yeah, it was crazy Skip who said that. No, it was everybody who thought that. I think that whole thing was totally rehearsed, and I think it is sad. And again, you guys know me. I just gave credit to Shedeur and Deion. I'm not a Shedeur fan. I'm not a Deion fan. I am a Tom Brady fan. I mean, I think he's the GOAT. If Tom Brady farted and you put it into a fragrance, I'd buy it. That's how much I love Tom Brady. But I'm not buying this. And I think it is so disingenuous on Brady's part. I think Brady is treating everybody like they're stupid. Like he's so smart because he was a good football player. Like, oh yeah, I'm just going to tell everybody that I had nothing to do with this. And then I'm going to attack the media. People love it when you attack the media. And then I'm going to make this seem like it's a conspiracy theory because Skip Bayless had the opinion that everybody else had. And I'm not buying it. And I think when I hear Tom Brady call out the media and Tom Brady go, try to make this sound like, oh, that's nothing. That's when I start to believe, okay, fine, bud. It's time for you to pick. Do you own the Raiders or are you a broadcaster? Because this doing it both ways, it didn't work for a lot of people last year. I thought it was odd, but it was fine. Whatever. If the league's cool with it and he's cool with it, whatever. But now it's like, no, dude. You don't get to wear both hats here. You don't get to. You've got to at least be intellectually honest on some level with all of us. So when it comes to Shedeur, again, good for Shedeur and good for Deion that for the last 2 weeks, we haven't heard those two go crazy. And also on Brady, dude, I think A, you're lying, and B, I think you rehearsed that whole bit. I think it was choreographed. And I think that Brady knew, I'm going to blame the media and blame Skip Bayless. And I'm a little offended that he thinks we're all that stupid. 615-737-1025. We'll hit your phones. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman & Company. 1025-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks, as we're out here at First Horizon Park today, tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Sounds take on Norfolk. Pre-game at 6:20, we hope. First pitch at 6:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball. Presented by Twin Peaks and by Family Leisure.
If you could predict the Cleveland Browns quarterback depth chart to start the season, what would it be? I would say right now, the quarterback depth chart would be Joe Flacco as the starter. It would be Kenny Pickett as the backup. And I believe it will be Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders on the roster. They're going to keep 4 quarterbacks in this scenario. And both those guys have pretty consistent game day inactives. I do think the spring is more important for the Browns than it is for other teams, and in particular at the quarterback position, because there are only so many reps to go around once you get to the summer. You're going to have to figure out who your best quarterback is. You also got to build an offense for whoever that quarterback's going to be and protect and prepare the other 10 guys in that huddle for the regular season, which means getting them ready to play with a certain quarterback. So I think over the next 5 or 6 weeks, what you're hoping for, if you're Kevin Stefanski, their new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, is that things begin to clarify.
There you go. That was Albert Breer on the Breer Report, in which he said, hey, I think the quarterback room of the Browns is going to be Flacco, starter, Pickett, backup, and Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders will be inactive. First of all, I mean, it doesn't sound like they had much of a plan when they drafted Dillon Gabriel if they were going to turn around and draft Shedeur Sanders. But a lot of people think Shedeur is going to win this job. Let me just say this. I don't know if the Browns are eligible for Hard Knocks or not. I'm going to assume that because the AFC North did that in-season Hard Knocks last year, the Browns are probably not eligible for Hard Knocks, which is too bad, because I would watch. Again, if that's going to be the case, that Flacco at 50 years old is going to be the starting quarterback of that team, that means that those Cleveland Brown preseason games are going to be a lot of Dillon Gabriel and a lot of Shedeur. I can watch that. In fact, I think I'd rather watch that than watch the fourth quarter of a Titan preseason game with Tim Boyle at quarterback. And it's too bad that the Titans aren't playing the Cleveland Browns in the preseason this year. 615-737-1025 and our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Here's one thing I absolutely love about this show. You cannot make everybody happy. And not that I try to make everybody happy, but there's just no way possible. Lenny says, come on, Jared. You come up with the most half-baked crap I've ever heard. You have no idea what Tom Brady thinks about Shedeur Sanders. Meanwhile, Dustin, who texted in at the exact same time, says Brady's out here saying, saving face, catering to Shedeur and Shedeur's crowd. He's making a PR move. So on one hand, I got the guy saying, Jared, this is a half-baked, verkakta idea of yours. The other saying, you're right, Jared. I cannot tell you how much of that I get. I had somebody on the YouTube chat that said something like, you talk about Shedeur every day. Can you get to Cam? I mean, we talk Cam all the time. And yesterday, people were like, do we have to hear another segment about Cam? And then I got one person saying, you talk too much Shedeur. You just can't make everybody happy. Here's the deal. If you're stupid enough to believe that Tom Brady couldn't have picked up the phone as an owner of the Raiders, and not some sentimental owner, an owner who the owner of the team has empowered, that he couldn't pick up the phone in between round 3 and 4 and say to John Spytek, the guy he got hired from Tampa Bay, hey, we should take Shedeur Sanders. I know the kid. I've worked with the kid. He'll come in. I know Deion real well. He'll come in. He'll be a good backup for the first couple of years for Geno. And then eventually, if he develops, we can turn it over to Shedeur. If not, it's a 4th round pick. Who cares? If Tom Brady had picked up the phone and said that, I think the Vegas Raiders would have drafted him. The reason that they didn't is probably because in the pre-draft process, before they even traded for Geno Smith, they sat there and said, all right, what do we think of the quarterbacks? Well, we like Ward, but we're at 6. We're not going to be able to get to number 1 to draft Cam Ward. We're not going to trade up. Tennessee, we called them. They want a gazillion picks in order to move up to number 1. Okay. What's behind door number 2? Shedeur Sanders. I know the kid. No, thank you. That's probably what happened in some capacity. And to that point, I kind of feel like it's just me. I kind of feel like they decided right then and there that they were going to not take Shedeur Sanders. And so I don't buy Brady. I don't buy what Brady's saying. And I love Brady. Absolutely love him. One texter says, Shedeur Sanders was expected to go round 1 and he went in round 5. That will humble a person. If picked in round 2, I bet he would have complained. His body language was pretty crappy when he hung up from the prank call. His body language was crappy when he hung up from the prank call. Would you want him to be happy about it? I thought he handled the prank call like a champion. Texter continues. I'd say Deion and Shedeur got some phone calls from some very professional people saying, just be quiet, be happy, and complain in silence, or they will eat you alive. You know what made that easy? Man, I almost didn't get drafted, but the team I didn't want to draft me took me. There's 4 quarterbacks, but I got my shot, thank goodness. I don't know. I think he's been humbled. I don't think they needed somebody in PR to call him to say, hey, Shedeur, maybe stop acting like an a-hole all the time. In fact, from what I heard, Albert Breer, and I think Breer's got some of the best information in the game, Breer said that leading up to the draft, Deion was calling teams, basically telling them, hey, I will stay out of it, because they got a little scared. And I guess in hindsight, they were right to be at least a little scared. Although that did not stop them from canceling that big party, which if I were them and I was worried that I might fall out of the first round, I might have canceled the big party. Then again, the way the draft works, it's like that would have then been this whole big can you believe they canceled their party? One texter says the only reason Cleveland drafted Shedeur was to rub it in Deion's face so that they could stay visible in the mainstream NFL media. The kid cannot, the texter says, play at the NFL level. Well, here's the good news about this. We're going to get to see. I don't think they're going to bring any other quarterbacks in. And when it comes to playing in the preseason, if Flacco's the starter, he'll get a series in one of the 3 games. Then Kenny will get a little time, but then it's going to be the 2 quarterbacks, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. Look, I like Oregon football. My buddy is the OC. He loves Dillon Gabriel, swears by Dillon Gabriel, as you would expect. Now, he swore by Bo Nix last year, and I think we can all agree that Bo Nix impressed us. But he loves Dillon Gabriel. And so I'm interested to see. But I think Shedeur Sanders is better than Dillon Gabriel. So let's see him play. You can tell me Shedeur can't play in the NFL, and for the most part, I kind of agree. But good news about this is we're going to get to see. 615-737-1025. Wes in Clarksville says, how often does a 5th-round quarterback get drafted to start on a team with 3 quarterbacks already? Usually he'd be lucky if that 5th-rounder makes the team. Well, here's why Shedeur is going to make the team. And so is Dillon Gabriel. They're going to carry 4 quarterbacks, like Albert Breer said, and they're going to deactivate 2 of them each week. So when it comes to Shedeur, he's not going to get through waivers and go to the practice squad. And neither is Dillon Gabriel. And I heard somebody, I don't remember who, last week, one of these former players who doesn't know if it's pumped or stuff, like LaShawn McCoy or somebody, said something like, Dillon Gabriel will go to the practice squad. Teams don't cut 3rd-round picks. I don't think Dillon Gabriel's going to the practice squad. So I think they'll both make the team. The question is, is either of them going to be their guy down the road? 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. That's 615-737-1025. So Nick Saban and the President of the United States are apparently teaming up to save college football. I have a thought. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025, live from First Horizon Park. Hey, Nashville's best deal this week is celebrating National Barbecue Month. Get a $50 gift card to Central Barbecue in Capitol View for half off right now. Try their new barbecue sampler, ribs, wings, barbecue sliders, and more. Go to theGameNashville.com/deals while supplies last.
The whole NIL dynamic.
Oh,
is
it's getting
what
interesting.
College football is now dealing with, because for years college football had a corrupt system that violated the federal antitrust laws. The legislative branch spoke more than 130 years ago with the antitrust legislation. The judicial branch has spoken more recently, now that somebody's finally realized, hey, all these NCAA rules are really antitrust violations because it's a bunch of independent businesses coming together and hiding under the NCAA umbrella to make these rules that fix the price of their workforce. Now that it's happening, chaos has ensued. Enter the executive branch with the nudging of Nick Saban, who frankly quit because he could no longer compete in today's marketplace. I know there's a more high-minded way to put it. The way I see it, he quit because he couldn't compete anymore. More importantly, he couldn't stack the deck in his favor the way that he used to, and he saw which way the wind was blowing, and I'm going to get out of Dodge before I finish 5th in the SEC. So now that that's all happening, college football is like, please save us from the mess we've created. President's considering an executive order that would in some way limit NIL, and I don't think they're going to do anything. I think he was just placating Saban with that comment.
All right.
The Wall Street Journal had the report. But, Chris, hey, if they do it, I want to see how they're going to restrict the pay that goes to CEOs. Are they going to restrict what actors and musicians make? Are they going to restrict how much money you can make off of stock trades? Because what the hell? At the end of the day, it's a capitalist society. It's free enterprise. How in the world are you going to restrict what these kids can make?
There you go. That was Mike Florio, who was talking again about this story that came up this week. Apparently, Donald Trump gave the commencement address in Alabama. He was introduced by Nick Saban. He sat down with Saban. Saban says, we need to bring order into paying these players. All right. And so Trump said, okay, I'll look at it with an executive order or something along those lines. Can I just say, as much as this is like a college football wrestling tag team on steroids, Nick Saban and Donald Trump teaming up to rein in NIL, I don't think this makes any sense. I mean, you heard Florio in that cut right there talking about we live in a capitalist society, right? So you're just going to say like, oh, no, I'm signing an executive order that these college football players are not allowed to make money. I don't think you can do that. And here's why not. Because if Trump were to put out an executive order limiting how much you could pay a college kid, it will take one state to challenge it in court, and then it will get shot down. So let's say they put out an executive order saying no student athlete is to make an NIL money over $10,000 a month. I think that was a number Kirby Smart threw out a couple of years ago, saying we should pay these kids more than $10,000 a month. And I think, well, we pay you more than $10,000 a month. So who are you to say what they're? All right. So let's say President Trump puts out an executive order that says no more than $10,000 a month for a college athlete. That's $120,000 a year. These guys are making way more money than that. So you're going to have a lot of pissed off college kids. Now, just thinking politically, I don't know if the state of Tennessee, which has challenged the NCAA over NIL, and Virginia, I don't know if those attorney generals would be challenging the NCAA. But I know who would. You think California with USC and UCLA, you think they're going to sit there and say, oh, okay, we got to cap the spending on our players. Sorry, Lincoln Riley. No, they're going to take that thing to court. And then once it goes to court, it's going to get shot down. Because without a collective bargaining agreement, you cannot cap somebody's pay. You can't do it. Like, they could not put out an executive order today saying sports talk radio hosts are limited to $100,000 a year. You know, Colin Cowherd makes like $6 to $8 million a year. Colin Cowherd deserves $6 to $8 million. No, it's not the biggest Colin Cowherd fan there is. But that's what he's worth. So that's what he's getting paid. And I have a problem. You know, I love Nick Saban. I have a problem with telling these college kids how much money they're allowed to make. You know, my girlfriend and I were watching the NCAA tournament, and I was telling her about Cooper Flagg and how this kid is going right to the NBA, and he's going to be the number one pick, and he's going to sign for a bunch of money, and he's going to be awesome in the NBA right away. Again, I watched Cooper Flagg play at Duke, and I thought to myself, this is what I thought that LeBron James would have looked like in college. And I'm like, he's making a bunch of money at Duke. He's probably making like $2 million at Duke. And she goes, that's so much money. I said, yeah. She's like, well, I don't think that we should pay him that much. I don't think a college kid should make that much. I said, well, I hate to sound rude here, but how much money he makes is none of your business. Just like it's none of his business how much money you make. So Nick Saban, again, he's all anti-paying these players because that's not what he's used to. But again, like, it's not your business what Cooper Flagg makes. It's not your business what Nico Iamaleava makes. It's not your business what any of these guys make, just like it wasn't any of their business about how much money you make. I mean, what if one of these Alabama players walked into Saban's office and said, Coach, you're making too much money? How would Saban have reacted to that? So I'm going to say this again. If you want to rein in NIL and set rules, you have to give something in a negotiation. You know, the best negotiations are when both sides feel as if they kind of got screwed. Not a good negotiation, a fair deal is not when one side dictates all the terms. That's not a fair negotiation. That's a surrender. Well, the courts have set it up to where the players don't have to surrender. Saban wants to make them surrender. You can't do that. If college football wants to regulate this, they're going to have to give up some of their TV money as part of a collective bargaining agreement. And they might as well get on and do it now, because if they don't do it now, eventually a court will make them. But this idea of Trump and Saban teaming up to save college athletics, again, it doesn't make any sense to me. It takes one state to say we're not going to do that, and then it gets challenged in court. So, I mean, I don't know. I just thought that was like more sizzle because of the, you know, the star power of the two, than it is a reality that this is going to be what limits NIL payment. Kenny the Mailman is up next here on our show. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Kenny.
Hello, Jared. I had a quick question and a comment about the Browns draft and quarterback room. Everyone's focused on the 5th round pick with the question mark, but the 3rd round pick is maybe even a bigger question mark. What is the one trait about Dillon Gabriel no one's talking about and no other quarterback had this year, Jared?
You tell me, Kenny.
He's left-handed. They have now drafted, and I mean, it's like a unicorn. You better be great like Steve Young if you're left-handed. But now, even in practice, is your weak tackle going to be your strong tackle? Do you flip them? The guards have to, if he's under center, the steps are backwards from the right-handed handoffs, and it's like, now how do you divide up the practice? I haven't heard anybody talk about that. I just wanted to say it. You have a great day.
All right, thank you, sir. Yeah, I mean, let me say this. It probably does make more sense for Dillon Gabriel to be backing up Tua than it would for him to be backing up Joe Flacco and competing with Shedeur. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. So, what does drafting Cam Ward mean for Brian Callahan's job security? I want to get to what Charles Robinson said on Robbie and Rex Road next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Still Company 1025, 1063, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, and we are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. We are live today, First Horizon Park, where the Sounds are taking on the Norfolk Tide, 6:35 tonight, as the Sounds have a great homestand. It was funny because I was over there talking with Jeff Hem during one of the breaks, and it was storming a little bit, and I said, so what do we think? We going to play today? And Jeff looked at me and he goes, oh, we're always going to play. He's like, of course we're going to play. This is going to pass in a couple hours or in an hour. And then the way the field drains, they'll be out there ready to go. And I would say for a ballpark built as well as this one, as new as this one, that would not surprise me. So still, come on out here to First Horizon Park. By the way, I saw the guys in the YouTube chat that were like, oh, they got Jared stuck in a closet. Not stuck in a closet. I'm up here in the press box. I'm up here in, the booth where they, I guess, call games and all kinds of stuff like that. So I want to get to something today that Robbie asked Charles Robinson, a senior insider at Yahoo Sports, this morning on Robbie and Joe. And it was about, okay, what does the drafting of Cam Ward mean for Brian Callahan and his job status? Here's what Charles Robinson said.
To me, it's a reboot, right? I mean, if you go out and you spend the first overall pick on a quarterback and Brian's involved in the process of vetting that player and, you go in with the intention of Cam Ward learning his offense, running his offense, building that relationship. I think you have to effectively start over in my mind because, and we discussed this last week. I think the worst thing you can do when you go and you get a quarterback is to, especially if the head coach is an offensive coach and, the player is running his scheme and, learning his traits, his culture, all these different things. The worst thing you can do is then erase all of that after 1 year and effectively start all over again with the quarterback and a new coordinator and a new quarterback's coach. Because that's another thing too you have to consider is if you steer away from Brian Callahan after 2025, you're steering away from his staff. That's what often happens. Everybody goes out the door and you're just beginning again. I would think that the alignment of the organization would have been, okay, we're going out to get a quarterback. We want this connection to exist beyond 2025. So even if there's struggles or if it's a bit of an uphill battle at the start, we're just going to have to fight through it.
So he thinks, you should be hitting the reset button on Brian Callahan by drafting Cam Ward. But the key word there is should. I heard him start. In fact, Reed, can we play that cut again? The first two words he said, I think, are the number one thing that I would highlight as far as that answer. Because, again, this is a senior NFL insider who's telling us, like, yeah, you should, bring your quarterback back. Here is what Charles Robinson said.
To me, it's a reboot, right? I mean,
the first two words, to me. To me, I think that's what you should do. Well, that's to you. But this is Amy Adams Strunk we're talking about here. And I kept hearing in that cut, you go in with the intention. You should this, you should that. My therapist years ago said to me, he goes, because I used to talk like that all the time. Be talking about my own feelings, and I'd be like, well, you try to do the best you can. You think this, you think. And he said, why do you keep saying you? I said, I don't know. You just say you when talking about yourself. And he goes, right, you're disassociating yourself when you say that from yourself. And I thought to myself, oh my God, that's right. Now it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. When somebody says something to me along the lines of, well, you always have to, no, you do that. I don't have to do that. So he says, you go in with every intention. You have to fire the coach. You have to fire you have to, again, that's what you would do. That's what a normal person would do, a rational person, a person in Charles Robinson who understands the league. But again, over the years, what have we learned? That's not how Amy Adams Strunk operates. That's not how the Titans operate. And see, that's the problem with this. The problem with the Titans starts at the very, very top, and it is the fact that they have the attention span of a 7-year-old. Again, at the very, very top. Who actually thinks that Amy Adams Strunk can live through a 5-win season? That she can live through getting drubbed by Jacksonville? Or that she'll be okay with getting housed by Kansas City at Nissan Stadium with 80% Chief fans in attendance? Or what if Mike Vrabel and the Patriots show up and smoke them? Do you think Amy Adams Strunk is going to be able to sit there in the owner's box and say, well, it's going to take some time? And again, I ask that with a question mark. I don't know the answer. I assume the answer, but I don't know the answer. She didn't have patience when John Robinson was the general manager. And he was, winning. So now Brian Callahan is in a position where he's kind of the odd man out here. Chad Brinker's the flavor of the month. Mike Borgonzi's the new hire. Neither guy hired Brinker, or neither guy hired Callahan. And the young quarterback can do no wrong. And this year, when wrong gets done, they will not blame him. They will not blame him. They will blame everything around the quarterback. This year, they will not blame him. Now, I am going to be fair with Brian Callahan. I'm going to say this. Brian Callahan has something that John Robinson and especially Mike Vrabel did not, which is humility. But at the same time, I feel like Brian Callahan's genuine disposition, which makes it very hard to say bad things about him. I really like Brian Callahan, the guy. But his genuine disposition is probably what saved his job this past year. If he was an a-hole like Vrabel, she probably would have fired him. So he's probably not going to get a pass 2 years in a row. And I know how this league works. Not only do I know how the Titans work, but I also know how the league works. If Cam Ward looks crappy, and again, that is determined, in my opinion, by winning and losing. I know it's crazy because people will say, well, how does Cam look? But how often does a young quarterback throw for 350 a game and 4 touchdowns and his team still lose? And we say, well, it's just the team that sucks, but the young quarterback's doing great. That almost never happens. Off the top of my head, Justin Herbert had a little bit of that, but that's about it. I mean, I still have people that text in and tweet me when I talk about Joe Burrow that are like, Joe Burrow, what's he done? He doesn't do anything. He doesn't win anything. Like, yeah, other than the AFC championship that he won, the other AFC championship game he went to, the fact that he threw for like 5,000 yards and 49 touchdowns last year. Other than that, yeah, Joe Burrow sucks. So I know how this league works. If Cam Ward looks crappy, which again is going to be defined by winning and losing because that's how we judge quarterbacks, the sentiment will go from you can't change things up on the quarterback to now you're ruining the quarterback and we have got to get a new coach in here to save the quarterback. Now, again, that's not what I would do. But like Charles Robinson said, he said, to me, this should be a hit of the restart button for Brian Callahan by drafting Cam Ward. He said, you have to go into this with the intention that, but again, what have we learned? When you say you in the second person, you're really talking about yourself. What I would do, but go back over the last couple of years. How many of those moves, firing John Robinson 2 days after a game in which they lost to Philadelphia when they were 7-5 in first place, hiring Rand Carthon, like choosing Rand Carthon over Mike Vrabel, promoting Chad Brinker. How many of those moves would you have made? I know I wouldn't have done that. But again, it's not about what I would do. I don't own the team. So when I hear that, I think people probably sit there and they're like, you know what? You're right. Charles Robinson said that they've got to hit the reset button on Callahan. Callahan gets a clean slate. What Malcolm Butler used to do, he used to say, clean slate with a full plate. Brian Callahan, clean slate with a full plate. Maybe in fantasy world, maybe in the patient society of pro football, Pittsburgh and other places. I mean, if Barry Trotz was the general manager and this was the Predators, and you say, hey, hit the reset button on Callahan, I'd say, well, I guess they're hitting the reset button on Callahan. But not with this team, not with this owner, not with this schedule that's coming up. They've already given the kid Warren Moon's number. They're not going to accept a bad season of 4 wins to say, well, it's going to take some time. They might say that in May, but they're not going to feel that way in November. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025 will hit your phones. Plus, there was one thing that I could not get over that I saw today. I just looked it up. Could not get over. Surrounding success and young quarterbacks and your quarterback and other quarterbacks, and we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
How do you judge Brian Callahan next year?
Ideally, you would like to see a scenario where a coach who specializes in developing quarterbacks is able to develop your number one overall pick quarterback. In an ideal world, it would really help Cam Ward to be able to have that. Since when have the Titans shown any patience when it comes to this sort of thing? I don't see how anyone can look at how this team is set up this season and how this season is probably going to go and feel confident that somebody's not going to get fired for it. And right now, I think if going by how things have gone the last few years, you would have to expect that would be the head coach. Now, if the team gets out there and they're improving, they play better toward the end of the year, there's a lot of scenarios that I think can affect that. But right now, if I'm Brian Callahan, I don't see how you can feel great about this scenario just because there's going to be so much growth that needs to happen, most notably with the game's most important position.
There you go. That was Gentry Estes this morning on Robbie and Rex Road. And again, Gentry isn't saying that they should fire Callahan at the end of the year or anything like that. He's just saying, it just feels like that's probably what's going to happen. And I think here's what I find to be hilarious, because Gentry is right. The thing that matters to me the most, and I would assume matters to you all the most, is that Cam Ward develops. The winning and the losing is secondary, but Cam Ward's development is the most important thing. Do you know what the determining factor in the success of a young quarterback is? How we as a society determine success when it comes to a young quarterback. Reed, you want to take a guess? Is it quarterback rating?
No.
QBR?
No.
Touchdowns?
No.
Yards?
No.
Pro Bowls?
No.
What is it?
Wins.
Winning and losing.
W's.
I looked it up today. Caleb Williams threw for 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Now think about Caleb Williams in the year that he had, the hype that he came in with, and the season the Bears had, and they canned the offensive coordinator in November, and they fired the head coach at Thanksgiving, and they went out and got a new coach, and they won 5 games, and asked, do we know if Caleb Williams is going to be a franchise quarterback or not? Now there's Jaden Daniels. Now Jaden Daniels, we know Jaden Daniels is well on his way to being a franchise quarterback, right? I mean, we saw them in the NFC Championship game. Jaden Daniels threw for 3,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 9 picks. So they threw for roughly the same amount of yards, 3,500 yards. Jaden threw for 29 touchdowns. Caleb threw for 20. Jaden threw 9 picks. Caleb threw 6. That doesn't really seem to be that different. Now, I will say this. Jaden Daniels did have 6 rushing touchdowns. But Jaden Daniels threw for 210 yards a game. Caleb threw for 208. A difference of 2 yards. Their seasons weren't that different statistically. But how we, the public, view it is night and day. And I even brought this up to TD earlier on the show. And TD was like, well, yeah, but you got to go beyond the box score. I mean, the guy in Washington that covers the team, he says that locker room believes in Jaden Daniels. Right. Because Jaden Daniels wins. That's why. Because they win ball games with him at quarterback. Mark Sanchez made it to the AFC title game twice in a row. His rookie year and second year in the league. Mark Sanchez sucked. But after those 2 years, you couldn't tell people that. So when it comes to Cam Ward, the reason I bring this up, Caleb won 5 games last year. After that Thanksgiving Day debacle where they mismanaged the clock, but who knows if they would have beaten the Lions anyway. They're not supposed to beat the Lions. After that Thanksgiving Day debacle when it comes to the when it would come to the Bears, they fired the coach because they were worried he was ruining Caleb Williams. So if this team wins 5 games this season, it doesn't matter this idea that a lot of people seem to have in their head that, well, let me say this. If it comes to, if it comes down to how the quarterback looks, that's what's going to matter. No, it doesn't matter. We judge you by winning and losing. Fairly or unfairly, that is the reality of the NFL and the ecosystem with which the fans value the NFL. And why this freaking music just keeps chiming in on my iPad, I have no idea. And it's driving me freaking insane. There's like some little baby jingle on here that just keeps popping up. I don't know how to turn it off. So if you hear the background, I apologize. All right, let's go to your phones. Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Jared has been waiting and is up next here on the program. Jared, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, on your podcast, whenever you upload them, just I don't know if you hear them or not, but it does come up on the podcast, that song periodically. So I don't know. Yeah, about this situation, and I guess I subscribe more, and I know back in the before the draft, the radio was which methodology is the easiest way to win a Super Bowl? Was it the Chiefs way with developing around a quarterback, or the Eagles way, getting more players and then figuring out the quarterback situation later? I just feel like they subscribed obviously to the Chiefs model with this Cam Ward pick. They put a lot of pressure on him, but also too, even more pressure on Callahan to develop and show some type of growth. And I think that in a way, are we seeing a precursor to getting my guy in here to develop him? And so here, getting to the question here, Jared, is how much percent of the blame at this point are you going to be putting on Callahan for the success or the failure of this season? If you could break it down, because personally, I will say, and I hate doing ask, but I don't think they've done a good enough job helping Cam Ward or Callahan in this situation. So I would be less, but where do you think their brains are in judging how much blame that they're going to put on Callahan? And I'll hang up and listen, man. Have a great day, brother.
Yep. So if the team sucks this year, I think Brian Callahan will get 100% of the blame. I don't think they're going to blame Mike Borgonzi. I don't think they're going to blame Cam Ward. If they are good this year, then Brian Callahan is going to get like 10% of the credit. And Mike Borgonzi is going to get a lot of the credit. Now, Brinker's not going to get a lot of credit either. Borgonzi is going to get a lot of the credit, and Cam Ward is going to get a lot of the credit. And you know how I know this? Because I've been through this before. Mike Mularkey, and you can say whatever you want about him and his old pawpaw coaches, but they took over the worst freaking team in the league. A team that was as bad as the Titans were last year. And overnight, that team won 9 games in their first season. Now, John Robinson got a ton of credit at that time. You people that now hate him, you loved him. And I loved him at the time too. Now, I still think he's a good general manager. You all think he sucks. But again, sometimes you people don't know what you're talking about. But John Robinson didn't do that by himself. That wasn't all him. It wasn't like Mularkey was holding everybody back, but that's what people thought. The next year, they got to the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They went on the road and they beat Kansas City. And Mike Mularkey got no credit. No credit. And I think Callahan's in a similar spot where if Callahan has success, he's not going to get credit. It's going to all be about Cam Ward and Mike Borgonzi and how brilliant they are. Because I've seen this. Callahan is the least popular guy on the totem pole right now. So he, whether it's fair or unfair, he's going to get the least amount of credit. I mean, I go back to Mularkey. Again, they had old coaches on that staff. Sylvester Croom, Terry Robisky, his name escapes me, but he was the offensive line coach who played on the Hogs back in the day and is in the Hall of Fame. Russ Grimm, like veteran coaches. And I think they taught those guys how to win. Like, I think that they taught that core, Byard and LeWan and Henry, and they taught them how to win. And then they just got thrown out like a bunch of, expired vegetables in the fridge. And so, again, if they lose, it'll all be Callahan's fault. I think Robinson took the job thinking, well, I have to go along with the owner's guy as coach in order to get the job. So what I'll do is I'll get the job. We'll be bad because we're terrible. And then once we're terrible, I'll fire the coach. And then they won 9 games. And it was like, well, can't fire the coach. Then they won 9 games again, won a playoff game. And I think Robinson thought he could get away with firing the coach if they didn't make the playoffs. Then they made the playoffs. Then they beat the Chiefs, and Robinson fired him anyways. And the fans were right along with it. I mean, the fans, you talk about ungrateful freaking fans. And this, I was so against it. And not that Vrabel wasn't a good coach. Vrabel was a good coach. But I was so against firing Malarkey because it's funny because everyone thinks I want to fire everybody, and I was against it. Because I had spent a decade watching the end of Jeff Fisher and Mike Munchak and Ken Wisenhunt, and I didn't want to go back. And you're winning with Malarkey. Why would you fire the guy? Why would you fire the guy when you win? If I told you right now, Titans win 9 games next year, Callahan keeps his job, right? What if I told you the Titans win a playoff game in 2 years? You'd be saying, wow, Callahan really can coach, right? You people fired a coach after that. And I'll never get over that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Okay, so I saw something today that kind of irked me a little bit. I think it was a joke, but I'm not totally sure about that either. And there's a media part of this I want to get to, too. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. It's time for the 4th annual 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament. Cromwell Media, along with partners Fox 17, Outfront Media, and Social Indoor, are proud to announce we'll be back at the Hermitage Golf Course on Thursday, May 29th to make a difference while having a great time. You can join us and a few guest members, athletes, and musicians as we raise money for Folds of Honor. Donations will go to provide life-changing scholarships to family of America's fallen or disabled military and first responders. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. So I got to get to something that I saw today. I'm sure many of you saw this on Twitter. I'm sure not all of you are familiar with this. So I guess all these teams, now that the draft is over, have, instead of doing hard knocks like the Giants did last year and it came out in the summer, they've got their content teams putting out all these war room videos. You know, there was Chris Ballard in Indianapolis when Kenneth Grant went to the Dolphins, and he was like, yeah, so they could go get Tyler Warren. So the Giants have put out a little series of them of their own, which, by the way, apparently the Patriots are doing one on Vrabel, which I think is going to be fascinating. So we'll have to watch that. But the Giants have put out a behind the scenes on their draft night. And it starts with a phone call that general manager Joe Shane made to Mike Borgonzi at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So right as the Titans hit the clock, Joe Shane decided to pick up the phone and make one last call.
You always get some butterflies or some, excitement or nervousness, and it's because you really don't know what's going to happen. Like you can do all the research you want, you can make all the calls, you can listen to media people, or look at mock drafts, and you really don't know who's going to be there. You don't know what people are talking about in other buildings. So you do the best to gather the information. Prepare yourself. You let the board talk to you.
The Tennessee Titans are on the clock.
Were you waiting for this? You gonna pick? I had to do it. All right, man. Well, good luck to you, man. I was gonna wait and just call you now on the clock, so I figured you guys were picking, but thought I'd give one more swing. All right, good luck to you. Tennessee's gonna pick. I think Ward's going here.
What a freaking dingleberry, this Joe Shane. I watched that whole Giants Hard Knocks last year, and I just thought to myself, God, this guy, he's such a dope. And then, so there's the call that he had with Borgonzi. And some people think like, oh yeah, he was just joking. He was calling, picking up the phone, say, hey buddy, yeah, so you're going to pick? Ha ha. Now remember, 2 days before this, Borgonzi said, yeah, don't call. Like, we're going to make the pick. We know who we're going to pick. You'll see Thursday night. Don't call. And Joe Shane still picked to the fire. I figured I'd take one last swing at it. Ha ha ha. Like, it felt like he was kind of joking, but it also felt like if Borgonzi said he wasn't joking, it felt like he would have been like, really? Really? And it reminded me of the draft night call he made last year, or draft day call he made when they were sitting at 6. New England had the 3rd pick. This is Elliot Wolf, who is their VP of player personnel. They're de facto GM in New England. This is the conversation from Hard Knocks between Joe Shane and Elliot Wolf. And tell me if it's not kind of the same from the regard that, like, if you're going to take one last swing, just put it all on the table. Like, call and say, hey, as Vito Corleone would say, make him an offer he can't refuse. Like, do that, not figured I'd call. Here was the call last year.
What's up, buddy? Good. I turned my TV on like 10 minutes ago, and I just looked up. I got Dr. Phil on in my office. That's Dr. Phil. It's probably. Oh no, I'm just saying. A couple of weeks of just going through 9,000 scenarios in my head. I could use a Dr. Phil right now. So what's going on? You guys still listening, or you guys make a decision? What are you thinking?
I think we're pretty heavy with it, and we're sitting here thinking.
Okay.
But if it's like 1, 2, 3 this year, 1, 2 next, not exaggerating.
So, but I mean, it's gonna be something crazy like that.
It would probably have to be pretty significant.
Okay, so like a 1 this year, or not that obviously it'd be 6 this year, a 1 next year, and then something more this year is not going to do it. It's got to be multiples in 25.
Just we're in this situation where we just probably sit and pick a quarterback,
Okay. All
All right. Well, if anything changes and you wanted to add something on that to take a swing, let me know. But that's, I mean, just again looking at it and 3 spots and all that stuff, I understand too. But
Yeah, I know. Just if again, if we had a quarterback, like
yeah,
really calling it in right now,
right. Yep.
I mean, I don't know. I'd say it's not a unique situation, but just the situation that we're in.
Yep. Yeah, and that's where I just wanted to. I know the boat you're in, and I had to make it. I was trying to make it attractive. So, it's.
Your communication has been good, probably better than mine. So.
No. I mean, hey, you're doing your thing. So, if anything changes, give me a holler. If not, we should. Best of luck tonight. All right,
Now,
take care. All right, bye.
Now, there were 2 totally different tones there, right? Like in the first one, it was, hey, buddy, I figured I'd take another swing at it. And the other one was kind of more like hat in hand, more, I don't want to say desperate, but like more, I don't know. But in neither call, Joe Schoen, and this is why I'm shocked this guy's married, because this reminds me of me when I was 24 years old trying to get girls to go out. I'm just being honest. Like, dude, at some point, you got to put it on the table. At some point, you have to go for it. At some point, you just have to say, in neither call, in both cases, he wanted the quarterback. And in both cases, he was willing to do something that would have made himself uncomfortable in order to get the quarterback. But in both calls, he doesn't actually make an offer. Like, again, he's like, hey, yeah, I was watching Dr. Phil. I guess I could use some Dr. Phil. Like, dude, it's the draft. Get to business. And I understand the idea of him not wanting to show his full hand, but they've already told you we're going to pick the quarterback. So if you want to convince him, instead of, hey, I was wondering if we could get in there and, maybe one day, maybe take a swing and see if we can, hey, buddy, figured I'd take a swing. Dude, just say it. Like, say, hey, 3 number 1s. I'll do it. 2 1s, 2 2s, Malik Neighbors. I'll do it. Like, you have got to put the heat on them. Could you imagine this? The Titans said, no, we're not interested. We're going to take Cam Ward. Don't call. We're going to. And I don't know how badly the Giants wanted Cam Ward. If the Giants didn't want Cam Ward so badly that they wouldn't do something crazy, then there's no point in even making that phone call. Like, I can promise you Borgonzi was on the other line, and he's looking around being like, oh, Joe Schoen's calling. Hey, what's up? And it's like, hey, buddy, wanted to give you a call and, just see maybe if, think about maybe just take a swing at it. He's like, no, click. He probably looked around the draft room and was like, shit, dope. Again, if you want the quarterback, at some point, you've got to go for it. If you like somebody, at some point, you've got to go for it. You've got to ask them out. You've got to make the first move. You got to go in for the kiss. You got to do something at some point. And again, when I was in my 20s, like, again, I wasn't batting 0, but I didn't understand the game. And it's like Joe Schoen's on the phone trying to talk to these guys. I'm like, dude, like, are you going to – Mike Borgonzi sees Joe Schoen's calling. Again, he's about to make the first pick of his career as a general manager, the one that's probably going to define it. His head is probably all over the place right now thinking like, here we go. Gets a call from Schoen. Probably thinks, oh man, Schoen is about to be desperate. We already know that they'd already offered 2 1s and 2 2s. Picks up the phone. What's up? Now, if I'm Schoen in that position, I'm actually calling because I'm going to see. I'm going to make an offer that's going to make him uncomfortable. At that point in time, you're running out of time. I'm going to make an offer that makes him uncomfortable. I'll give you 3 number 1s. I'll give you 2 number 2s. And I'll give you both my 3s this year. 3 number 1s, 2 2s, and both my 3s this year. Now, look, I wouldn't do that because I don't think Cam Ward's worth that. But if I'm going to make the phone call, then I'm going to put an offer on the table that I'm going to make you refuse. And instead, this freaking dodo is over here being like, well, if you wanted to take another swing at it, then, if you wanted to maybe Like, doofus. Every time I see, and he seems like such a nice guy. And that's probably why he's kept his job in spite of all the losing. But every time I watch one of these behind the scene things with this guy, I'm like, what a freaking dodo brain. Unbelievable. Like I'm watching this and I'm like, you freaking doofus. Just you bozo. Here's the other thing about the Giants behind the scenes draft video thing that I actually thought was pretty fascinating. You know how much we listen to these insiders around the draft? Schefter and Rappaport and Breer and Schrager and Diana and like, oh, this insider says the Steelers might be. Reed, did you have any idea that Jacksonville was going to trade from 5 to 2 before Jacksonville did it?
No.
So this was inside the Giants draft room when Cleveland made the trade to go up with or to go back with Jacksonville. Jacksonville makes a trade to go up to number 2, play the cut.
With the first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Cameron Ward, quarterback, Miami.
All right, here goes the trade.
The Blockbuster trade, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have agreed to terms with the Browns to trade from number 5 to number 2.
1 and 2 did go as we expected, and we had caught wind probably a week before the draft that Travis Hunter was going to go number 2, and it's probably not to the Cleveland Browns. So were we positive which team that may be? No, we didn't know, but had a pretty good idea who it was based on previous conversations.
We heard Hunter, but I don't know that for sure.
So they had heard for like 2 weeks that Jacksonville was going to move up from 5 to 2. Not one of us had heard that. Not one person across the country had heard that. And so I think about like Adam Schefter makes $9 million a year. If I'm ESPN, am I not looking at Schefter saying, what the hell? Like, shouldn't you know that if he knows it? Which goes back to my theory that is the only things that get out are what people want to get out.
No, but
Nobody-
worse than that, though, he didn't even mention Jacksonville. He said, we knew this was coming. We didn't know what team. So they knew that Cleveland was not going to stay and pick there. But someone was going to come up, and they didn't know who it was going to be. That, to me, is something should have been reported a long time ago if people actually knew that, which they didn't.
Where were the insiders on that?
On the
Where was
outside.
Diane? Where was Schrager? Where was Breer? Again, I mean, hey, more power to them. You know, I think the only things that come out are what people want to come out. And that's why that didn't come out until it happened. But man, I saw that and I was like, oh, good job, insiders. But man, what an awkward conversation between Joe Shane and Borgonzi and Elliot Wolf and everything else. All right, let's get to your phones next. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company on 1025 The Game.
I believe that deal began with swap of firsts, next year's first, this year's second, next year's second. I mean, is that a windfall? I don't know.
It's pretty good. Say it again.
Swap a first, so they would have gone from first to third.
Yep.
Next year's first, this year's second, next year's second.
Yeah, I'll take that. I mean, I'm taking that.
Okay, on the morning show last week, and Sonny chimes in and says the report was 2 1s and 2 2s, but based off the clip from again, this was behind the scenes, the Giants' own content creation of Joe Schoen calling hey, buddy. He said the report was 2 2s and 2 1s, but based off that clip, are we even sure the Titans knew what the actual offer was? That's a really fair point. Again, we played 2 cuts where on the day of the draft, Joe Schoen, the general manager of the Giants, was looking to move up. And in both cases, never actually made an offer. He's sitting there looking to move up to get to 3 for Drake May last year. He's like, so 1, 2, 3 this year and a 1 next year, that wouldn't do it. It's got to be multiples in 25. And Elliot Wolf is like, yeah. Well, make the offer. Like, that's the time where you say, all right, here's the deal. 1, 2, 3 this year, 1, 2 next year, and a 3 in 26. Make the offer. Caleb says, good God, that guy sucks. How is he even in that position with that terrible sales strategy? Here's my theory on Schoen with the Giants. And I know that this is not Giants radio, but I do feel like we spent enough time talking about them based on all the potential Cam Ward trades and everything else. I think Shane's a good scout. He was kind of the top lieutenant in Buffalo with Brandon Beane, who was the general manager there. Brandon Beane's got some thick skin. Thin skin. Because he was going nuts last week about, well, the people said our draft wasn't very good. Like, dude, just shut up and go win on the field. Don't worry about what they're saying on talk radio. But he was, I think, a really good scout. And so what happens? You just don't hire the good scout from the good team. And I just don't think Schoen has the chops to be general manager. I forget who it was we were talking about either earlier this week or last week. I cannot remember who it was. And I'm like, at some point, you have to be an a-hole. Like, at some point in time, you have to. If you're going to have that position, you can't be Mr. Nice Guy. One texter says, Jared, if Callahan is gone at the end of the season, would you want John Gruden to be the coach? He can and has developed quarterbacks, or who's on your list of coaches to keep an eye on?
Oh,
again,
my God,
I think
it's
the
way
list
too early for this. Please don't start
for Gruden
this.
talk.
Yes, please don't start. Don't even acknowledge this. Do
So,
not feed them.
I do think that the list of coaches, if the Titans were to move on from Callahan, which, Reed, I don't know about you. I think it's probably more likely than not that Callahan's not the coach this time next year.
Wow, that's a bold statement. You ready to put that one on paper? Guarantee?
Well, I'm not guaranteeing it. I just think it's more likely than not.
More likely than not?
So, like, a percent chance. What percent chance do you think Brian Callahan has to keep his job this year?
70%.
Oh, I think that's ridiculous. I think it's like 35%.
No. I don't think you can. That's not congruent with your thought that they're potentially cutting payroll and getting this stadium ready to sell the team.
But they're going to have to sell tickets next year. And how do you do that? The quarterback won't be the new thing to get people to buy tickets next year. It'll be the new coach.
Coaches don't sell tickets.
Oh, yes, they do.
No, they
You
don't.
think that Mike Vrabel's not selling tickets in New England?
Okay. Is there a Mike Vrabel that can come into this franchise that has a history with the franchise, that played for this franchise, that is a good coach and has already proven that? No,
but there are 2 candidates that I think the Titans could hire that you people would absolutely buy. There's Matt Nagy in Kansas City, but he developed Mahomes. He can do it for Cam. And then there's Mike McCarthy. And look, I don't think McCarthy's a very good coach. I think he's a lot like Joe Shane. But at the same time, like McCarthy did win a Super Bowl in Green Bay. So I think those are the two guys that they would be looking at if they fired Callahan. And I think it's more likely than not that they will fire Callahan. Because I think they're going to win 5 games. And in this league, and especially with this owner in this town, it's easy in May to say they're not going to fire the coach. But come October, November, when you're losing all those games, people get impatient, especially your owner. So I go back to it. I think he's going to be fired. I mean, personally, I like the guy, so I hope it doesn't happen. But I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, you can't do it because of Cam's development, because if Callahan can't coach, then it doesn't matter about Cam's development. So I'll keep an open mind, but I think he's more likely than not going to be the coach. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. Chad Withrow. We'll have Vandy in Tennessee tomorrow. So Chad Withrow will join us a day early from Outkick. We'll get into that next with him. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, and we are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, live today from First Horizon Park, where the Nashville Sounds 6:35 taking on Norfolk. The tarp is on the field. This field drains incredibly well, so I'm thinking they're going to be able to play today. In fact, Norfolk is out there warming up ahead of batting practice right now. So that's exciting. Joined now by Chad Withrow from Outkick, presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Chad, I want you to solve a debate between David Reed and I. What % chance do you give Brian Callahan of keeping his job beyond this upcoming season for the Titans?
What % chance do I give Brian Callahan of keeping the job? I think it's 50-50 because I think his fate rests solely with how good Cam Ward's going to be this upcoming season. If he shows signs that he looks like a legit #1 pick in the draft and the offense is improved, I think that Amy Adams-Strunk will keep him around. And if he doesn't, I think he's going to be gone. But I think it's really tied completely to the offense and improvement with the offense. And I do think the offense will be improved with Cam Ward under center and not Will Levis. So I think it's 50-50 at best. Now, who agrees with me between you and Reed? Because I may be surprised by this answer.
I would say neither of us agree with you.
Okay.
Reed thinks it's 70%. Reed thinks 70% he's back. I think 35.
So I split.
How Cam Ward looks. If Cam Ward looks good, then, Jaden Daniels last year threw for 3,500 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 9 picks. Caleb Williams threw for 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 6 picks. Again, Jaden was better. He had more touchdowns, and he also added some rushing touchdowns in there. But the difference was Jaden Daniels throwing for 210 yards a game, Caleb throwing for 208. The real difference was Jaden's team won and Caleb's team didn't win. And I just think the Titans are going to lose a bunch of games, even if Cam Ward's good. I think the defense sucks. The offensive line's a question mark. The receivers are not very good. The tight ends are atrocious. The running game, So I think it's going to be very hard for Callahan to keep his job because I think he's going to have to win in order for people to feel like Cam Ward is progressing, Chad.
Yeah, and I think, last year with the Titans, not only were they the worst team in the league, but they got blown out a number of times. And they weren't even competitive in games, which makes it that much worse. So the question then comes down to Amy Adams-Strunk and her level of patience, which we know that she's not patient. We see that Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker are all saying the right things about, we've given her the plan, and she understands the plan, and she's good with the plan, and the plan is going to take some time to build the roster back up and do this and that. But it's kind of like Tennessee Vols fans, feeling really good about things right now and how the whole Nico Iamaleava situation played out. But then if they lose to Vandy next November, they're not going to care. And they're going to be ready for heads to roll at that point. I feel the same way about Amy Adams-Strunk. She could love the plan right now and say, yeah, it's going to take time. It's going to be another bad season. It's going to be another high draft pick. But if we got the right quarterback, it's going to be okay. And then the Titans, have 3 wins in December again next year, and suddenly it's not good enough, and she's going to fire the coach. So I really think it comes down to how much do we buy into Amy Adams-Strunk buying into Mike Borgonzi's plan with Brian Callahan and with Cam Ward. And again, I think it comes back to 50-50. I don't think the Titans are going to be as bad as they were this past year. They're going to improve on that win total this upcoming year. I feel good about that happening. But then how much does he need to win in order to keep his job? I don't know, because I don't know how much she's truly going to be patient with this thing, because we've seen before she gets really impatient really quick.
Yeah. I do wonder when it comes to, because I was talking about this earlier, she fired Robinson and he was winning when she decided to do it. She fired Vrabel. She chose Rand Carthon over Vrabel. She fired Rand Carthon and promoted his lieutenant ahead of him. I do wonder, though, how much does Brian Callahan being a nice guy, as opposed to Vrabel And like Robinson, I like Robinson. You know, I don't know how Robinson feels about me. I think at times he probably likes me. I think at other times he probably doesn't. I have no idea. I like him, but Robinson can kind of be a chotchety a-hole too. How much does Brian Callahan being a nice guy, in your opinion, help him out?
I think it helps him with the media mostly, that, you know, they're going to cut him some slack because he's a nice guy. But I don't think it helps him with the owner that much. I think if she sees that things aren't improving, then he's going to be fired. Now, again, I think they're going to improve enough to where he keeps his job for at least another year. But I do think that it helps with the media. It helps with the fans. You know, the Mike Vrabel thing's an interesting one because Mike Vrabel was a complete jerk to everybody in the media, was always sort of the smartest guy in the room. And I said all along, that's great when you're winning, when you're the NFL Coach of the Year, when you're going to the AFC Championship game. But when it turns south, fans aren't going to put up with it as much. Your owner might not put up with it as much. But it really came down to losing for Mike Vrabel. I think it's going to come down to losing for Brian Callahan, too. I don't think him being a nice guy is going to save his job with the owner. But I do think that it does help with the media and with fans. And look, the media is the conduit to the fans. So if the media likes you and they're not going to be as hard on you because you're a nice guy, which I'm not saying you're doing that, Jared, but I think a lot of people probably would, then I think that ultimately helps you with some of the fans that may be quicker to turn on you. But I don't think it's going to help with Amy Adams Strong.
Chad Withrow's our guest. What do you make of this? Across the country, people this week have just been roasting and barbecuing Abdul Carter for the gall that he had to call up LT and ask him for his number, call up Phil Simms, ask him for his number. They're saying, how dare you even ask Lawrence Taylor? But nobody said anything here when it came to Cam Ward and Warren Moon. And I was the guy being the bad guy for saying, I don't like it.
Well, I think a couple things. All right. All due respect to Warren Moon, who is a great player and a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He ain't Lawrence Taylor. Okay, Lawrence Taylor is arguably the best defensive player in the history of the NFL and revolutionized the game. Warren Moon did not do that. So we're talking about two different leagues of players, even though both are Pro Football Hall of Famers. So I think that's part of the response that you're getting there. I agree with you that I think it's getting ridiculous with this. And here's the problem that I have with it. I think it's the player, the rookie, putting a target on their own back.
Yeah.
I think when you do that and you have the audacity to go to the Hall of Fame player or the jersey's retired and ask for it, you're sort of putting them in a difficult spot, which I love how Lawrence Taylor handled it. And Warren Moon's a very nice guy, and I understand him giving that to him. But, you know, we talk about if Cam Ward ends up being Jake Locker, how foolish that photo opportunity looks and how dumb that video looks 5 years from now, if that's the case. And also, Cam Ward, with all the pressure you already have going into the NFL, you're the number one overall pick. You were seen as the savior to a market to get the NFL team good again. You already have a ton of pressure on you. I don't know why you want to have that added layer of, and I want to unretire a uniform and a jersey number to wear that uniform before I even take a snap in the NFL. I just don't think it's good for anybody involved. I don't think it's good for the player that takes the jersey. I don't think it makes the Hall of Famer look good or the player with the jersey retired. I think in the end, Lawrence Taylor's the one who looks really smart in all of this.
So funny that you brought up the putting the pressure thing, because people are like, Cam is a dog, that won't bother him. I'm like, I don't know. Then you got D Mace this week yelling and screaming about how the Titans need to be more selective. They don't need to retire his number, Keith Bullock's number, Blaine Bishop's number, Frank Wycheck's number, but they need to be more, D Mace said, more selective with who they give it to. I'm like, dude, either your number's retired or it's not retired. For me, Steve McNair, Eddie George, Derrick Henry are the only three players that were primarily Titans who should have their numbers retired, and everything else should be in circulation. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and look, you're a Pro Football Hall of Famer, you get your number retired. I mean, there does need to be a higher standard for it. I think they probably do retire too many numbers, and that's a byproduct of this being a young NFL market. I mean, as Titans fans and people that go way back with this team from the beginning, we revere those legendary figures early on when they moved to Adelphia Coliseum at the time and won immediately. It was a huge deal, and they became legends. So I think we probably in terms of the league, we as Nashvilleians overly revere those early Titans more than markets that have had pro football for longer would, because they have more of a history with it. So I think that's natural. You can't go back and reverse history with that. But I would agree with D. Mace moving forward. There needs to be a higher standard for jersey numbers retired. And those numbers that are retired, the players who got them retired should have a higher standard for giving that number up. And I don't think you do that to someone who's not taken a snap in the league yet. It was a nice moment. It was a good job by the Titans to pull off that moment. I just think if Cam Ward isn't great, I'm gonna be on this show with you 3, 4, 5 years from now, Jared, and we're gonna be making fun of that moment. And that's unfortunate.
I have a hot take that I want to get to on the other side with you before we hit the hot seat, but we'll do that next. Chad Withrow with us on the program here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And we are joined, as we usually are on Fridays. Today's Thursday. We'll have Vandy UT by Chad Withrow from Outkick, presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Chad, I want to start with this take I had this week. I did the math. When it came to the reported offer that PK said the Giants made the Titans 2 1s and 2 2s in order to get up to go get Cam Ward. And the Titans decided at the combine that Cam was their guy, and they rebuffed all the trade offers because they love Cam so much they must think he's Joe Burrow. I ask you this question, which is, after doing the math about the money, if the Titans were to go get Sam Darnold or Geno Smith, you know, a $40 million quarterback, I think Sam's 37.5, and I think Geno's a little bit more than that. If they were to get that guy, plus take the deal with the Giants, with all those extra picks, the difference in money that they would have to pay over the next 2 years, as opposed to just drafting Cam Ward and having only their own picks, is roughly $100 million in cash. I think there's a chance that Amy Adams Strunk gave them a budget and they figured, you know what? We can't get the quarterback and make the trade and fit it within the budget. I don't think $100 million is something an owner doesn't have a say in and doesn't care about. And I think that's why the Titans didn't make the trade and drafted Cam Ward. What do you think of that take?
I think it's reasonable to think that a budget of some sort had some factor in them not taking that deal. What I don't understand about refusing the trade is, remember Mike Borgonzi, one of those early addresses, talked about whatever that number of 12 or whatever first 3-round picks over 2 or 3 years. Remember, he had a set number of players that he wanted, that you said you could really revamp a roster with this many players in the top however many picks. And that would have given them that immediately with that trade, right? When you look at this year and next, they would have had that immediately had they accepted that trade. Now, if money was, you know, the biggest factor, and so you could still do that trade and just let Will Levis play again this year for nothing and go pick number 1 again next year. And then depending on what that number 1 pick turns into with the Giants, you could have 2 top 5 picks, you know, a year from now and really go on the cheap. Look, I get what you're saying, but the option could have also been take the trade, don't draft a quarterback this year, maybe draft a quarterback next year and go dirt cheap this year and just start Brandon Allen and lose almost every game that you play. So it's hard to get a sense of exactly what this franchise wants to be right now. And I don't think we're going to fully know until we see the quarterback play. And now that we know they've turned down that trade, that tells us a lot either about what Mike Borgonzi and his team think about Cam Ward, and that is that he's Patrick Mahomes essentially because they turned down that trade, or that there is something going on with the budget where they didn't want to spend the money on a veteran player and instead wanted to go cheaper and draft that quarterback number 1 and have him start for you.
They are, by the way, 30th in cash spending this season, according to Spot Track. And they're paying more to their quarterback because Cam's getting a $32 million signing bonus. So they're paying more to their quarterback than, say, Houston, Washington, you know, teams that have quarterbacks on rookie deals that haven't signed new deals and haven't gotten signing bonuses this year. They're 30th in the league in payroll. And that does, in my opinion, doesn't get talked about enough. Okay, hot seat time.
Well, one quick thing, and I'll just pose this question to you and your audience to think about. How many ownership situations in the NFL are worse than the Titans right now? Just think about that. This could be a discussion on your show at some point. Like, tell me who has it worse from an ownership standpoint. One that doesn't live in the market, one that is quick to react to things, one that we're actually legitimately asking questions about whether or not they're going to spend money. Like, how many actually have it worse than that right now? Now that Daniel Snyder's gone and they have good ownership with the Commanders, I can't think of many that are worse right now than the Titans.
Dallas.
Okay, but at least he'll spend money.
No, he does not. He is cheap.
Well,
he is sneaky.
Agree to disagree, but yeah, he's been bad. I mean, Jimmy Haslam, you know,
Jets.
He'll spend money, but he's made some disastrous decisions. Point being, she's bottom 5 in the league.
Oh, for sure.
However you want to play.
Okay, hot seat number 1. Vanderbilt and Tennessee baseball this weekend. What do you make of the rivalry And does Vanderbilt need to take 2 out of 3 in order to punch back in the recent history of this rivalry?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for Vandy because Tennessee's really struggling right now. So, we talked about it a year ago, and it was amazing how Tony Vitello had completely shifted things in favor of Tennessee. Then they go on to win the national title, and it feels like things are shifting even more. And it just felt like after the start of the season, Tennessee's ranked number 1 for a while. That, man, he's just going to keep it rolling. And whatever mojo those Tony Vitello teams have, especially offensively, this team has not had in the last month. So I think it's a great opportunity for Vanderbilt. Tim Corbin's got a really good team. They've bounced back nicely. It's a big-time series. This is a big-time rivalry. That was Tony Vitello's charge when he took the job. Get on par with Vanderbilt baseball. Make it a rivalry again. He's done that and then some. I think it's a good opportunity for Tim Corbin to make it more of a rivalry again and take at least 2 out of 3 in this series. But Tennessee has, the past couple of years, I feel like they've kind of turned their fortunes on a Vandy series and done some really good things against them and got them going. So it's a great opportunity for both teams. Neither coach likes the other one, and that makes it even more fun.
Number 2, is Tim Corbin an example of an old dog learning new tricks in college baseball?
Well, I think because, when NIL came in, some advantages that Tim Corbin had at Vanderbilt started to go away, and he's had to resettle himself in the new world of college baseball. I don't think anything he was doing was outdated or not smart or any of that. I think that he's sort of learned where Vanderbilt is in the new setting of college baseball, and he's learned how to adapt that way. And it's ultimately going to rely on more, tournament success. But let's make it clear about Tim Corbin, too. The dude doesn't have to do anything else, and he's a legend for what he's done with Vanderbilt baseball. There's no, anything is icing on the cake right now for Tim Corbin.
I mean, he's the greatest coach in the history of Vanderbilt.
What he's done. Yeah, I mean, he's incredible. So he's a legend regardless, and I think this shows that he's here to stay, and they're not just going to fade off into the darkness. So that's good news for Vanderbilt, and this should be a fun series this weekend. I know Tony Vitello doesn't like him. I know Tim Corbin doesn't like Tony Vitello, and I think that just adds to a really fun rivalry with 2 really good teams. And Tennessee's got the talent to go on and run the tournament too. I'm not going to discount them or say they're done for the season. That's not someone you want to host in a regional if they end up not hosting, or a super regional. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun this weekend.
Number 3, George Pickens to the Cowboys. How will this end, and who made the right decision, Dallas or Pittsburgh?
I think they both made the right decision for this reason. Dallas badly needs a number 2 receiver to pair with CeeDee Lamb. And this is a guy who averages a lot of yards per catch, explosive guy, can really help you and give you a vertical threat for that team. He's also a head case, and he's a diva, and he's a problem. And Mike Tomlin, even though he was able to coach Antonio Brown for as long as he was, doesn't ultimately like problems. So if you can get rid of that player in a contract year, I don't think it's the worst move ever. So it's one of those that I think actually makes a ton of sense for both sides.
Number 4, what's wrong with the Boston Celtics, and does their ineptitude through the first 2 games of that playoff series make you more interested than you would typically be in a second-round NBA playoff series?
I just got done watching the Celtic City documentary on HBO Max that Bill Simmons put together. I think it's 9 parts throughout the history of the Celtics. It's terrific. Highly recommend everyone go watch that about the history of the Boston Celtics. It's done by the same people who did The Last Dance, the Bulls documentary. That got me more interested in the Boston Celtics. And now the Knicks coming back from 20-plus points down in 2 games to go up 2-0 in Boston definitely has me really centered in on the series. This is going to be interesting to look at the ratings for the NBA playoffs moving forward, because you got no LeBron James and Luka Doncic, got bounced the first round. You had this high-profile series between 2 gigantic markets with New York and Boston. You still have Steph Curry and the Warriors as a big brand that's left out there. But outside of that, you've got teams like Oklahoma City and Minnesota and Cleveland and Indiana. So I want to see what the interest level looks like in these playoffs moving forward. But that series absolutely has my attention right now. I am loving it. I don't know what's going on with the Celtics, but the Celtics are in trouble. And all you got to do is watch all the crazy New York Knicks fans in the streets of New York going nuts after each win to see how much trouble they're in.
Number 5, would you be in favor of capping NCAA student athlete salaries?
Yes. I'd be in favor of anything that's going to put guardrails up and some sort of regulation to make it look, I know that certain teams are always going to have an advantage, so I'm not going to say it's going to be fair for all or equal for all, but at least a system of rules in place where we know what the rules are. And they got to tighten up the transfer portal. There needs to be 2-year contracts with a player. You can't have players going into that portal every year to just make more money somewhere else or at their current school. The players know they have all the leverage. They're utilizing that leverage, and it's throwing the game completely out of whack. I'm all for it. People I know say, oh, I don't like college sports anymore because it's just like the pros. And I come back and say, it's not just like the pros, because the pros have a salary cap. The pros have rules. They have contracts. This has none of that. It's worse than pro sports. If you're so anti-pro sports, then what this is right now in college sports is far worse. So, yes, I would be in favor of that or any rules and regulations that's going to make it where at least everybody knows what the score is in the sport at all times.
Do you think it's possible, though, to actually legislate it without there being a collective bargaining agreement in which the leagues have to share some of their money?
No, and I think that's where it's going to have to head. They're going to have to be employees of some sort. They're going to have to collectively bargain. You've got Nick Saban on this presidential committee with the big billionaire guy from Texas Tech. You're going to have to add conference commissioners to that committee. You're going to have active student athletes, former student athletes. States attorneys generals is going to need to be on that. A governor or two will need to be on that. A TV executive. I mean, think of all the people you're going to have to really have to have a true committee to figure this thing out. And a lot of it's going to be lawyers that are going to have to come to some agreement on how to turn college athletes into employees and make it where they can collectively bargain something. I think that's where this is headed.
Last one, your thoughts on ESPN saying we will pay more for 9 SEC games?
Well, knowing Greg Sankey, who is a master negotiator and isn't going to bend until he gets what he wants out of a situation, this to me ensures that they're going to 9 games after this season. Because that report getting out, that's what he wanted. He wanted ESPN to come back to the bargaining table and to give them more money for that 9th game, and they are. And now the SEC is going to be playing 9 games.
You just think it's a matter of when, not if?
I think it's a matter of this is the last year, right, in the rotation, and then it kind of starts over the following year. I think it's going to be not this year, but 2026. We'll see 9 conference games.
Chad Withrow from Outkick, presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Chad, thank you for being accommodating for us this week. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Chad Withrow on our program. So there's one thing that a lot of people around here seem to think is not going to happen. And yet the Titans are telling us it's going to happen. We'll get to that coming up next. What Rich Eisen had to say about it, we'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. All right, let me tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller is actually proud supporters of both the Vols and Vandy, so I don't know who they're going to be rooting for or taking or whatever this weekend. But I am going to tell you that I'm giving something away at the end of this, so be listening first for me to tell you about how much I love Hiller. Nobody wants to deal with a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical emergency, ever. And most of the time when that happens, you don't know what it will cost or if something will get fixed correctly, or if someone's just trying to sell you something that you do not need. When you call Hiller, their experts are going to solve your problems and solve them quickly. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, the price you're told is the price you'll actually pay with no hidden fees or surprises on your bill. So book online now at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. My guys, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller called the Happy Face truck today, and now Let's give away something. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you'll score a pair of tickets to Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin evening at the Ryman Auditorium on Thursday, May 15th. Good luck. Caller 5 wins right now at 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company. We continue 1025 the game.
But is it really going to be a situation where Will Levis can compete with Cam Ward? Or because that door does appear to have been left open slightly ajar when this was said last week. And again, I guess one way that Cam Ward would be talked about is if he's in a quarterback competition with Will Levis and Will Levis is winning it. Like fair and square, straight up, no thumb on the scale just because someone was drafted first overall, and we're willing to let him marinate. We're willing to let him work his way through getting ready because Will Levis is showing up loaded for bear, putting mayonnaise in his coffee and eating bananas and getting ready to go.
Then why didn't you take Travis Hunter?
You could have had Hunter. No, I'm fully aware of that, and I might be completely misinterpreting what Brian Callahan had to say, but I have since read tons of articles and do not see there's no question he's our starter and he's going to be installed as our starter. And sure, I mean, does this push Will Levis? Yeah. Does this push Will Levis to say essentially Brandon Allen or Tim Boyle have a shot at the backup job?
But Will Levis had his chance.
Yeah.
Why'd you take a quarterback number 1 overall?
Because Will Levis wasn't the guy, or Cam Ward has such a major upside. Like if Caleb Williams was the guy being drafted, it would have been, oh yeah, this makes complete sense. Will Levis, see you later.
That was Rich Eisen earlier today. He's trying to figure out why is Brian Callahan why is he not just coming out and saying that Cam Ward is the starter? Does this mean Will Levis could be the starting quarterback? And TD was on earlier today and he says, hey, just because they're saying that he has to win the job doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a fair fight between all 4 guys that they say have a shot to be the starting quarterback of the Titans. I'm just going to say this. I think Cam Ward's going to be the starter. This reminds me of what the Texans did a couple of years ago, where they said it was going to be a competition between Davis Mills and CJ Stroud and Case Keenum. And CJ Stroud was the starting quarterback at the beginning of it, and CJ Stroud got the starting job. That's what I think is going to happen here. And that's what I think's, so I think it's probably much to do about nothing. But let me just say that. I want the Titans to take it slow with Will Levis. Excuse me, with Cam. I don't give a rat's ass about Will Levis. Don't give one poop about Will Levis. But I want them to take it slow when it comes to Cam. And the reason being is I believe that there are 2 choices. You can either go super speed with Cam Ward, where if he's not ready for that speed, and oftentimes in the NFL, we see these young quarterbacks put out there in positions to lead the team before they're ready. If he's not ready for super speed and he sits back on the bench, it'll be okay. Again, a lot of quarterbacks needed to sit. The greatest quarterback who ever lived, Tom Brady, sat the bench. Aaron Rodgers, who's won 4 MVPs, first ballot Hall of Famer, sat the bench. Patrick Mahomes already has 3 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs, sat the bench. Lamar Jackson did not start right away. He's got 2 league MVPs. Josh Allen, the reigning league MVP, did not start his first game as a rookie. Nathan Peterman started in Buffalo. Steve McNair's the best quarterback the Titans have ever had. He sat the bench. But because, and I think that those Scarbini producers that Rich Eisen had, I think they are, no disrespect, Reed, you're not a Scarbini producer. You're an A+ producer.
Good, because I don't even know what Scarbini means.
Okay, good. Yeah. Those Scarbini guys that Rich has on his program, they're like, well, why'd you take him number 1 then? Because we think in 3 years he's going to be a star. That's why. He doesn't have to be a star tomorrow. He has to be a star eventually. And I don't understand, as much as I can say this, I do not understand why, if Brandon Allen starts at quarterback for the Titans, Titan fans are going to go nuts. Why people around the country are going to think that Cam Ward is a bust if Brandon Allen starts the first game his first year. If Will Levis starts the first game Cam Ward's first year. Again, was Josh Allen a bust because Nathan Peterman started? What did the Houston Oilers get out of Chris Chandler winning something like 13 games over 2 years? Well, they didn't ruin Steve McNair. That's what they got out of it. It's okay to take things slow. You don't have to do what everybody else would do. In fact, Tim Grover, who is Michael Jordan's old trainer, Kobe Bryant's old trainer, Dwayne Wade's old trainer, He's got a book about basically how these guys that are the elite of the elite, the true killers out there, how they've become this way. And one thing he says in his book, which I subscribe to, is if you do everything like everybody else, you'll end up just like everybody else. It's okay to take things slow. Again, if you do things like everybody else, you'll be like everybody else. So why not do what Tom Brady did, what Mahomes did, what Lamar did, what Allen did, what McNair did, what Rodgers did? Why not do that? It's not the end of the world. It's okay if Cam Ward is not a superstar day one. It's okay. But no matter how many times I say that, I just don't think people are going to feel that way. I think they're going to feel like it is a slight to Cam Ward. That is a sign that they shouldn't have picked him if they take it slow. And I think that's stupid. 615-737-1025. Vandy, Tennessee. First pitch tomorrow, 3-game series. Tennessee needs to rebound their season. Vanderbilt needs to punch back in this rivalry. I have a theory about what I think the next step in this rivalry should be. I want to get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
So what do you make of where both teams stand and this weekend series coming up?
Yeah, I would have never expected going into this that Vanderbilt would be ranked higher than Tennessee. That hasn't been the case all season. Tennessee's been number one for a lot of the season. Whereas I think Vanderbilt's kind of been under the radar a little bit of a younger team that's starting to improve a little bit at the right time. Tennessee needs this. This is a big weekend for Tennessee. They go to Arkansas to end the regular season. It's a very good team. So if you don't win this series, I'm not so sure you're going to get the next one. And if you close on a run like that, then you're probably not hosting in the NCAA tournament. So I think it's that pivotal for Tennessee that they have a good weekend. I think they're probably going to have a good weekend only because when these two have played, there have been two consistencies when these two have played the last few years. It's been very chippy, very heated, and I think that'll be the case again. There's several reasons for that. But also Tennessee's just pretty much dominated Vanderbilt up until here very recently. Vanderbilt got one game to close last year's series. Then they beat them in the SEC tournament one time. But, it's not easy to go to Knoxville and win. Teams have made it look easy here lately, which has been one of the big surprises of this season. It's really the first time under Vitello that's happened. But I just feel like there's a lot on the line for Tennessee this weekend. We'll see how Vanderbilt responds to it. They can kind of play spoiler. They're a team, like I said, with some young players who are starting to improve, especially offensively. They've been a little more clutch lately, and there's going to be a lot of clutch situations, I think, going out to Tennessee this weekend. But I think this will be a circle the wagons kind of weekend for the Vols.
That was Gentry Estes on with Robbie and Joe this morning talking about the Vandy Tennessee series. And again, I don't, the regular season with college baseball, I don't get super into it. Willie, he loves it and eats it up and everything else. And I'm not saying that, I'm not going to do the whole bit of like, who cares because again, you care what you care about in this case. And Tennessee being good, I think is actually good for people to pay attention and care about Vandy baseball. I think these three games are huge. I think it's big for the rivalry. And I feel like this is really the only sport where it is a true rivalry, where the teams don't like each other, the fans don't like each other, the coaches don't like each other. This isn't like Vandy in basketball where, yes, they beat Tennessee, but Tennessee's more worried about Kentucky and Florida and everything else. And it's certainly not football. So these three games are in Knoxville. Next year, the three games will obviously be here in Nashville. And I have a hot take. And I don't know if the SEC would even let them do this. But if I were Vanderbilt, I would come down here to First Horizon Park and I would play one of the three games here instead of at Hawkins Field. Again, I don't know the exact attendance for Hawkins Field off the top of my head, Reed, but I'm going to say it's probably somewhere around 4,000 if I had to guess.
I'm going to look it up.
I'm going to guess somewhere around that. Well, the attendance here is 11,000. And I think that if they played here, they'd sell 11,000 tickets for Vanderbilt versus Tennessee. So here's the deal I would make if I was Vanderbilt. All of our season ticket holders get this game for free, as part of their season ticket package. Every other ticket in the building goes towards the Anchor Impact Fund. That is Vanderbilt's NIL arm. And it goes specifically for Vanderbilt baseball. Now, I don't know how much money those tickets make. I'm not the general manager of the Sounds. I'm not the head of the ticket operation. I'm not somebody who's well-versed in, cost per ticket, plus renting out the building, plus, I don't know. But I got to imagine that would bring in some money. So if you're Vanderbilt, you're going to play one of your three games next year here at First Horizon Park. It's going to be packed. There's going to be Vol fans everywhere. You're giving up for one game your home field advantage. But all the money that those Vol fans spend goes right to you and right to you buying better players. So now Vol fans have a conscious choice to make. Are you going to support the Vandy program while supporting your team? And again, you're still playing two games at Hawkins Field. But I think if you did that, again, just my opinion, you'd make a lot of money for your NIL fund, and that would help Vanderbilt get some better players. Not that Vanderbilt doesn't have NIL money, they do. But I would personally enjoy making Tennessee fans pay. That's it for us. We are out of here, Stillman and Company. Guys, I'm on my way out of the country. I will see you all when I see you all. Enjoy the weekend, Stillman and Company. 102.5, 106.3 The Game.